Good evening, everybody, and welcome along to the latest RaceRoom special event. Tonight is the Daytona 2.4 hours, and we welcome viewers on both the Traxion YouTube channel and also RaceRoom's official channel as well. Now, I should start off the broadcast by saying there's a few technical issues going on behind the scenes. There were a lot of drivers trying to join this special event tonight. In fact, we had over 800 entries with still 20 minutes to go, and we believe there's been a few teething troubles as this number of drivers have tried to enter the server. So the reason I'm starting with that is that we're still waiting for confirmation on when this event is actually going to be going ahead. But we very much hope there's going to be plenty of racing action ahead of us and in a very short space of time. But either way, I'm nice and comfortable, and I'm alongside, once again, as I was at Macau, Zach Sweeney. Welcome along, Zach. How are you getting on?
Yeah, not too bad. I'm glad I don't have to deal with this headache of the server problems. So big respect to the guys down at RaceRoom for doing everything they can. Obviously, you know, they're not going to want to drag it on for any longer than it needs to be. They are on it. They're doing their absolute best. So I guess all we can say is thank you to the community for being, to some extent, quite patient. I know that's not universal by any means. But yeah, looking forward to this. Commentated on the Daytona 2.4 for a couple of years in a row. It's been a couple of years since I've been able to do it. So yeah, looking forward to it. It's January, which means, you know, everyone in sim racing is on Daytona sweating it out, which means they should be quite good, should give us some good racing. Obviously, we've got the prototypes and the GT3s this year, so yeah, let's bring it on.
There's always something special about a multi-class sports car race at Daytona in January, because of course it marks the start of the new race season. We've all had a nice Christmas break. You know, you've got basically two big events for me at the start of January. You've got the Daytona 24 hour and you've got Rally Monte Carlo for motorsport fans. And it's just fantastic that in sim racing, there are so many different platforms that have official versions of Daytona, and we can go racing no matter whether you're on PC or console, whether you're on iRacing or of course RaceRoom Racing Experience. We have seen the 2.4 hour Daytona run before on RaceRoom. We saw it last year with the DPI class and the GT3 class. But since then, Zach, hypercars are now available on the platform, and that means we're going to go racing in the most modern endurance racing machinery, and that means we're essentially replicating a mini version of the Daytona 24.
Yeah, we get to do 10% of it, which is good. Actually, to be fair, it's probably slightly more than 10% because the real life one, you know, the fog. So actually, we're doing quite a high percentage of the full race. Looking forward to this. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's always good. I will be honest, I've never driven a prototype in my life. They scare me. The most I've done is a P3, and I enjoy the LMP3. It's a nice balance. I'm too scared to touch the prototypes. They're way too quick. So big respect to the guys that are obviously alien quick and able to do it. Obviously, strategy is going to be a big thing over the 2.4 hours and pure pace, the slipstream and that strategy and how close the highest level of RaceRoom is. The drivers, you know, are going to be at their absolute best and delivering the action that we saw at Macau. Obviously, Daytona, I would probably say in terms of the racing we're going to get, you probably couldn't get more polar opposite, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Macau race that we commentated on just about a month ago was basically a battle of survival, and it was about staying out of the walls, keeping it clean, keeping the pace up. We saw a very exciting race. We saw a high attrition rate as we expected. Daytona's a little bit different, and although, as you say, it's a much smaller, more condensed version of a traditional Daytona 24-hour race, the reality is with modern-day endurance racing, these races come down to the last few stints anyway. You know, even the 24-hour race at Daytona these days, with safety cars and with basically balance of performance and how close all these different manufacturers are, you always get a very close race towards the end, as we saw once again at this year's Daytona 24. So although it is shorter, it is still very much a realistic interpretation of the 24-hour race. We have strategy to think about. We've got tire stops. Do you take 4 new tires and have a longer pit stop, or do you try and double stint? What compound do you go for? And of course, multi-class action means we're going to have delayed cars in traffic. We're going to have hypercars struggling to find space around GT3s. And of course, that still means despite more room than Macau, we still have potential for disaster.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, when it comes to the real life Daytona, obviously we had the prototype settled by what in the end, like 1.5 seconds between Nasser and Aiken, I think.
It was amazing, wasn't it?
The GT3s were even closer than that. I think a couple of years ago, I can't remember. The P2s were like side by side across the line, something like that. It's ridiculous just how close it can be after so long into a race, and you know that's going to be absolutely no different today. I'm almost certain. What I am a little bit upset about, not upset, I guess, I don't know the words, disappointed, I don't know, is a couple of years ago we had a 30-minute MX-5 support race to the Daytona 2.4 hours, and that was genuinely some of the best racing I think I've ever seen. It needs a comeback, I'll be honest, for next year or a special event sometime in the future, because the MX-5 is of quality. But yeah, for the 2.4, you're absolutely right. It's going to be separated by not very much at all, at least what I can predict. Hopefully, we're going to have some variation in terms of the cars and the strategy, and it's not going to be a single make fiasco as we've seen on other platforms this month so far. Hopefully, we can have some of that variation and see some good manufacturers towards the front.
Yeah, just to give you a quick update for those of you watching on the situation. So we do believe there is maybe a slight change in plans. We might be going for a community server race rather than the scheduled 6 p.m. special event or 7 p.m. depending on where you are, of course, in Europe and the UK. So bear with us on that one. You should be able to find out more information as well on the RaceRoom Discord server, so keep an eye on that. And we will, of course, keep you up to date with things. But we do believe we may be jumping into a community server race. So it might not be exactly what we had planned, but we should still get some great racing action here at Daytona, which is great. And yeah, you made a very good point. It's going to be interesting to see which cars are dominant in each class, or whether we're going to have close racing between the different manufacturers. Last time out, I say last time out, a year ago when this race took place on Daytona, it was a Lamborghini festival in GT3. I think the top 5 positions were all Lamborghinis. Now, more cars have been added to the GT3 roster since then, so that's something to keep an eye on. But of course, hypercars weren't a thing. It was just DPI back then. So this time, we have 3 different hypercars. We've got BMW, Porsche, who of course have dominated the race in recent years in real life, but it's been very, very close. So, it's not real domination in that sense. So I hope we see a battle between all 3 manufacturers, but it will be interesting to see if everyone tends to pick the same cars or whether we see a great variety, because we have to say we have seen a big variety in the past of car choices between different drivers.
Yeah, absolutely. So all I can say is I'm looking forward to this. And look at that. We've got cars out on circuit, which is, at this stage, we're very grateful for. Obviously, we can see some familiar names, and just jumping in, when one that sort of strikes out to me is the likes of Mate Mikovics. Obviously, the Hungarians are quite prominent in the world of RaceRoom racing experience. So it'll be interesting to see what those guys can do towards the sharp end of the field. Got about 5 minutes left of the practice session before we jump into a 20-minute qualifying session, which around a circuit like Daytona, I don't know, John. It should be a perfect opportunity to actually nail a lap. I don't think Daytona, in essence, is overly complex enough to see huge gaps in qualifying. I think what we're going to see is quite close.
Right, so we're just having a few issues technically here with the microphones, so just bear with us. We're just going to make sure that we can both hear each other, myself and Zach. So we're just going to work through those issues, and we'll be back with you in just a second, hopefully. Okay, so I believe we may have solved those problems, so apologies for that. We've got 3 minutes and 50 seconds to go in this practice session, of course, so whilst we get these drivers into this server with the new look event tonight, we will, of course, sort through our technical issues as well. It's been a night of technical issues, but that's fine. It happens sometimes. We still have a very exciting race ahead of us, and you can already see the multi-class traffic here in the practice session as we watch Fabian Roth in the Audi R8. Now, we will, of course, be having drivers joining in different cars. We've got lots of different liveries to get used to, so bear with us while we get familiar with who is driving what car and who is competing in the class. We were expecting to be covering the top split tonight of the special event, but of course, with this the issues we were having earlier on, and this is now a community event, it will be a little bit more of a mixed bag. So I do believe it's been based on a first come first serve situation, so whoever is able to join the server is in tonight, and that's good because we'll see some new names and some exciting new talent racing around Daytona here, but it also means that there's a few more variables at stake as well, so we're going to have a lot of fun with this regardless, and we'll see who's going to come out on top. We do see some familiar names, of course, in the server, which is great to see as we look at our first hypercar now. It's the Lamborghini SC63 of Olivier Jourdan, the Frenchman. And that is a name that I am not familiar with in the RaceRoom special events we've covered so far. So, yeah, that's good to see, Zach, isn't it? Some nice new names to keep an eye on here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the thing we were talking about as well before the broadcast is that with RaceRoom, it's great from a commentary perspective because you get very familiar with who's where, but it's always really, really good to shine some light on the community. I think at genuinely the top level of sim racing, one of the biggest problems is that underrepresentation of that wider community. It's very sort of, I don't want to say elitist, but you always see the top guys, your Team Redlines, your Porsche Commanders right at the top end. So I think actually, the silver lining of all of this is that we do get to see other names. They get to celebrate their success and start the year really, really well. I know during the technical problems that we had, some of the guys in the YouTube chat were saying that they were being patient because they wanted to say hi to their mum on stream. Well, some people now have the chance to do that. Hello to everyone's mother and anyone else that's watching along at home as well. So, yeah, I suppose a silver lining and some good can come out of this as well. So, also, what it does do is give the other guys in the community an opportunity to race against the likes of Mate Mikovics and those that are towards the sharp end of the larger competitive field and, see where they rack up.
You're absolutely spot on. And it's a really good chance for someone here to make a name for themselves. Maybe someone who doesn't quite have the driver rating to make it into the top split. Because, of course, not only does it take skill and talent and ability to get into the top split, it also takes time and commitment to actually build up your ranking. You could be the fastest driver, you could be a golden generational talent, but you haven't done enough races to actually gain the points to get into the top split. Or maybe you've gotten caught out in a few accidents. So what we could see is some new names popping up with a lower rating, but actually could be every bit as fast as some of the top drivers we have here. Because, of course, you can recognize some familiar names there. We've got Bo Dixon in the hypercar class. We've got Mohsen Kratoshvili there. We've got Gra as well. Lots of Mikovics, lots of familiar faces in both classes as well, to be fair. Plenty in GT3 as well. And then it's a perfect chance for some other drivers to come in and make a name for themselves, as you say, which is great. And we will say hello to all the parents, all the friends, all the family watching at home, because this may well be the first broadcast for some drivers in this field. So I'm certainly excited for this, Zach, and I think we've got a good race ahead of us. Strategy-wise, we're expecting hypercars to do around about 40 to 45 minutes per stint. GT3 cars around about an hour. So that does mean we'll see probably 2 stops for GT3s. Hypercars, probably 3 stops. But let's see if anyone tries anything unique with the strategy.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing we're going to see. I remember a couple of years ago, the Mackenbergs, Sven and Marvin, did something a little bit different. If memory serves me correctly, they did have a couple of internet issues that day which stopped it coming to fruition, but for a moment it worked. And their strategy was to lift and coast, to save as much fuel as they can, and to offset their pit stop ever so slightly. I can't remember if they did try and do a 1 stop, which would have been very, very brave because... yeah, it would have been very difficult to say the least, but they gave it a go. Obviously, Daytona, understandably, a lot of it is taken flat out, which means fuel consumption is relatively high. But if you're able to get into that slipstream, if you're able to maybe work with someone, i.e. maybe your brother in the form of the Mackenbergs, you can maybe kind of get it to work. So, yeah, maybe we'll see someone doing something different. I'll be honest, when it comes to Macau, fair enough, that was only a 2-hour race rather than a 2.4-hour race. There wasn't too much diversity in terms of the strategy. Maybe that extra 0.4 of an hour, that extra sort of little splash and dash towards the end, maybe invites people to be a little bit cleverer with the strategy because, if they lift and coast and save for the first couple of hours, they then have less fuel to put back in right at the end of the race. So, there is some variation there, especially in the hypercars because they're shorter stints. So there's, I suppose, more margin for things to change and adapt. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see.
It's a very valid point because, of course, when a race has a very... let's say an expected strategy where it lines up perfectly with the number of pit stops you need to do, it takes away some of that variety because drivers know if they just do this many laps and make it for 45 minutes or however long it is, they can make it to the end, and it kind of takes away any variation. When you have a situation where you maybe need a 20-minute splash and dash, but there's no way to do it without that splash and dash, suddenly it opens you up for alternative strategies. Maybe you take your short stint first. You get out of sync with everyone else. You start with lower fuel, you're faster at the beginning, you get out of the traffic, and then you have a longer stint at the end. So it gives you a little bit of opportunity to do something different, which is always fun to see. We now look at Tom Creed, the Brit in the Lamborghini. So we've got a couple of Lamborghini SC63s out there, which is good to see. Qualifying has begun, and it's a 20-minute session here at Daytona. So you can see what it's like for the drivers here. 20 minutes, it sounds like quite a lot, but the time does pass very quickly. And at Daytona, there's a lot of flat out sections. As you can see, the banking now towards the back straight, you're spending a lot of time flat out in the throttles. The lap times are still quite long, even though there aren't too many corners around here, Zach. But as Tom Creed comes through the Le Mans chicane, formerly known as a bus stop, of course, do you maybe want to take us around a bit of a guide of a lap at Daytona?
I'll do my best, because like I said earlier, I've not driven these hypercars. They do scare me. I have done it in a GT plenty of times, though. You're right. You know, there's not too many corners, so what I would expect is probably quite close lap times, in all honesty. There's not too many opportunities to sort of gain that lap time. First big one, though, comes at turn number 1. Obviously, you're flat out all the way through the exit from the Le Mans chicane, I will say begrudgingly, onto the tri-oval and towards turn number 1. You're going to be braking. There's a bit of a marshal light on the right-hand side. You're going to try and open up the corner as best you can. We'll watch a GT3, actually. Stefan Tarut will come across the line and set his opening lap. Currently provisionally pole in the GTs, but you're sort of opening up as much as you possibly can right to that white line. A nice late apex, second gear just to sort of pitch the car through, and Bo Dixon now making his way, I should say, out of the Western Horseshoe. A very tricky corner. I don't know about you in your experience of the Western Horseshoe. It's a hairpin, but it's a hairpin that you can really attack the entry of, which means that it's not just that traditional, oh, I'm going to take a late apex and maximize the exit. Because it's quite wide going in, you really can carry quite a decent bit of minimum speed through.
It sort of feels like 3 different corners in one, really. You know, on the way into the corner, it's very difficult to pick a braking spot, I find. And, you know, the line for qualifying is probably not the same as the line for the race into West Horseshoe, because you've got to be a little bit defensive. I think in a racing situation, when you're on your own, you can really attack it and, you know, come out wide, then come in for a bit of a late apex and get the power on from there. It's probably the fastest way to do it. But when you're in a racing situation, that really does leave the door open for someone to send it down the inside. The other thing about Western Horseshoe, Zach, is it always lasts longer than I expect. It feels like you can get the power down, and so often I find myself understeering, oversteering, every kind of steering off onto the curb on the left and sometimes the grass. So it's a tricky corner in, it's a tricky corner out. I think the biggest challenge with West Horseshoe specifically is actually in traffic, you know, because if you just misjudge that braking point slightly, you are having to trail brake in a little bit, and it can cause a lockup. I think it's basically going to be an action point for crashes between the 2 different classes. We don't want to see crashes, but we do, because we all know what sim racing's like. We all know what happens. Mistakes happen. And I think it's so easy to get it wrong into there, especially when there's maybe, you know, GT3 cars that are carrying less speed through the dogleg before it. And once you get on the brakes for that corner, you're basically committed. You can't really do much to change your course of action. So expect to see incidents there, let's say.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially with the GTs, because, you know, they've got that ABS, they've got something to lean on. They'll brake a little bit later, a little bit harder, which can actually often catch out the GTs and the prototypes quite often, especially when you've got that really eager prototype that just, you know, has the prototype mentality, I'll leave it at that, where obviously it overtakes you straight back onto the race line, chopping right in front of your front bumper, then obviously hits the braking zone of the West Horseshoe, because it comes at you quite quickly, you know, through the dogleg, flat out left-hand kink, and then almost immediately, especially if you're sort of fuel saving, you're pretty much on the brake straight away. You've got about a second or 2 before you're slamming on the brake. So deceptively, it is quite a tricky corner. Currently, Mate Mikovic is the one leading the way in this qualifying session. Still, though, 14 or just under 15 minutes left to go in this one. 1:34.5 at the moment is the benchmark. And I'll be honest, a half a second gap. I wasn't expecting that, especially towards the sharp end of the prototypes, especially because you've got the likes of Mikovic, Dixon, Mosin, Sipek, who we've seen before as well. Plenty of recognizable names, and at the moment, Mate Mikovic, a 0.3 of a second advantage, is not doing too bad. The good news is we've got Lamborghini, Porsche, BMW 1, 2, and 3 in Hypercar. Still got 40 minutes to go, but it's looking pretty good.
It instantly shows you the potential for different manufacturers to be fighting at the front, which is great to see. And as you were speaking about the 5/10 gap, it of course went down to 3 because Bo Dixon managed to set a very quick lap time in the Porsche. So 40 minutes to go, plenty of time to chop and change. We now go on board with Alex Mosin as we head now into the very, very tricky first corner. Such a long braking zone, trail braking, so easy to lock up, snatch a wheel, and it's essentially a perfect training ground for a trail braking technique now as you head through the fast chicane down towards International Horseshoe, which is probably the easier of the 2 horseshoes, let's say. A lot of space you can use on the exit there as you run over the white line, use a bit of the curb. It's all about getting that traction on the exit and straightening up the car. This is the dogleg we talked about, so probably flat out in the Hypercar BMW, and then this is where it's very tricky to spot a braking point in towards West Horseshoe. You've got to delay your turn a little bit, and you can see there Alex just pushing that bit too hard on entry. You can see him fighting the rear of that BMW as he exits the corner as well. Then it's a quick brake on the curb, and this is where you really need to focus on your exit here. Through in and out, on towards the banked oval, and of course the exit speed from that corner is crucial because it carries you all the way down towards the Le Mans chicane or the bus stop, whatever we're going to go with for this stream. And that is a crucial part of the lap as well, Zach, just for being able to carry that speed, because of course it's the longest acceleration zone, one of the longest acceleration zones on any calendar.
Yeah, it's so awkward. Like it's one of those that it just goes on longer than you think. Obviously, through the Le Mans chicane, again using all of the curb possible. Gone are the days of just the yellow sort of triangles on the inside. There are anti-cut curbs, and it is very difficult to negotiate, especially in these prototypes, because they run so low to the ground, because they have such a sensitive aero platform. If you get it ever so slightly wrong, you can very easily bottom out the car or completely understeer or oversteer on the way in or the way out. Incredibly difficult. And like you were saying, that trail braking, incredibly key all the way around Daytona. Again, it's a circuit that doesn't have many corners, but the ones that it does have, you really do need to be on it. Through the International Horseshoe, we'll see the Organ Donut, who just clips a nice mid-apex, but again, all of the rotation around here happens on that brake pedal all the way through the corner. We saw it previously, of course, with the driver we were riding on board with, got a bit of a snap right before the apex of the Western Horseshoe. Because you're trying to brake as late as possible, you're carrying the braking into the corner, and as you start trailing off, that's then when the rear starts to snap, and maybe a couple of adjustments to the brake bias we'll be seeing throughout the race. I'm sure the rearwardness of the brake bias in qualifying is not what they're going to be running in the race, purely out of a sense of self-preservation.
Absolutely. I should also just say, if you want to get in touch with us throughout the race, we will be keeping an eye out when possible on the YouTube chat, on both the Traxion channel and the RaceRoom channel. So do leave your questions for us on there. We know there's a lot of disappointed drivers out there, because we, of course, Zach, had, I think it was nearly 1,000 signups for this race, which is just amazing to see. And it's obviously a shame, the issues that we've had tonight. And of course, as we said earlier, RaceRoom have done what they can to be able to put on a show here. But unfortunately, it's just not quite worked out as the original plan intended. But we hope you stay with us, and we hope you enjoy the broadcast nonetheless. And yeah, it's a perfect opportunity for some of these lesser known names to make a name for themselves here, as Organ Donor heads down a tight line. You're trying to straight line that backstretch as much as possible before the tri-oval. Coming to the end of the lap, you can tell you're on a good lap because you're trying to shorten that run, and it's a 1:36.5 there for Donor heading into the first corner. We now go with Monty Verstappen. I did see M Verstappen, and I got a bit intrigued and then saw that he was German. Monty Verstappen, this is, in the BMW in the 36 car. Now, we'll see what he can do, but he's currently 3.2 seconds off of the pole time, which is a 1:47.1 in the GT3 class from Spiegel. So there's actually, to be fair, there's already 8/10 between the top six. That's pretty close around Daytona. And the draft is another big thing here, Zach. If you can just stay in the slipstream, stay in a train around here, and as long as just coming out of the next corner we're coming up to now, as long as you're close enough, you can pull all the way back up towards the chicane and stay in tow. So essentially, it's crucial to not make mistakes around here and just hang on to the cars in front of you. It can really help your pace.
One thing that I've noticed, because a couple of weeks ago I was doing some MX-5 racing at Daytona, one thing that really baffled me about people was how eager they were to battle for like 10th place. And I'm sort of like, well, guys, like there's 9 cars in front of us that are all really close, and we're fighting this hard for what is effectively P10. Like, with so long left to go in the race, why are you fighting this hard for these positions and not trying to work forward? Because the minute you start battling, the minute you lose the slipstream, I say near on impossible, and I'm going to stand by it because it effectively is. It becomes incredibly difficult to reclose that gap, because there are fewer corners around here, and because you spend so long flat out. The differential that you get and the gain that you get from being in the slipstream is just that much larger. So, when drivers are battling too hard, or they don't think long game, they don't prioritize where they could be in quite literally a couple of hours time from the start to the end of the race, that's then when we're going to start to see the gaps start to open up. If drivers are clever about this, even if you're sort of half a second, 0.6 of a second a lap off, as long as you can stay consistent and stay with the pack of cars in front, it could be anyone's race, realistically, especially if you are able to nail the strategy and always at some point be with someone to maximize the slipstream. Yeah, it's completely wide open. And probably what you'll find is that even if you are 0.6 of the pace, off the pace in qualifying, when you get into the race and once you're racing with that train of cars in front, naturally you're going to find yourself going quicker anyway. So I'll be interested to see the level of racecraft that we've got in this split, considering the mix and the level of drivers that we've got on display.
Absolutely. Of course, anyone could have gotten into this race, and that means that you're going to have a mix of experience levels, and it's going to be a good learning curve, I think, for some of the drivers with less experience. And it's also going to be an interesting one for the drivers at the top, because maybe, as we see Kratoshville going for a spin there in the 963, but we're going to see drivers in the top of the class that are very used to racing with people that are maybe within a second or two of their times. Now, if we're coming up to lap traffic that's maybe 3 or 4 seconds off the pace, maybe even more, it's also going to be that element of unpredictability. You're going to need to have your wits about you, because it's essentially the equivalent of driving around with, platinums usually, but then having a number of bronze drivers in there with you as well. We've got all sorts of skill levels here, and that is going to play a significant role, I think, in this race. And just like you said, it's about not making mistakes, isn't it? It's about driving to a time that is good enough to stay in that stream, stay in that train, essentially. Keep grabbing the slipstream when you can, and that's going to pull you along and keep you in tow. You're going to obviously be able to pick up more pace from the faster drivers ahead of you as well. And I think that's the thing. Of course, the issue with that is for the faster drivers, they can do that without actually needing to push it 100%. If you've got the pace, you can back it off by a couple of tenths and still stay within the draft. So that makes it easier for the fastest drivers to stay in that front group as well. So it doesn't make it any easier for the drivers further back. It just gives them a chance to hang on. And then, of course, the pit stops will throw a spanner in the works, because it is an incredibly difficult pit lane entry here at Daytona. Very difficult to spot your braking point. And if you get it wrong by 5 or 10 meters, that can have a significant impact. The drivers are going to really need to watch that, getting slowed down safely and getting into the pits without a penalty, because I do think this race could be lost on strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're going to make a huge difference based on, when you come in, who you come in with, because if the entire train stay out or come in maybe a lap before and you're able to stretch an extra lap and you're by yourself, you're going to lose quite a significant chunk of time because of that, and maybe then be offset from the rest of the train. Obviously, these are huge hypotheticals, and we'll have to wait and see what happens in the race. But yeah, strategy is going to be hugely important. And you're right about pit entry. Right, you get it wrong, you get a penalty or a drive-through, whatever it is. You come back round to serve it, you get it wrong again, you get another one. You go back round again, you try again. It's the very unfortunate cycle that I see way too many times around Daytona of people unfortunately just getting that recycled drive-through because of the pit lane. It's very difficult, and strategy very important. And again, like we were saying, racecraft incredibly important as well. The mentality these drivers are going to have, which is probably going to play nicely into the hands of the faster drivers, the more experienced drivers. They know how to deal with races at this level and these sorts of situations. And like you were saying, they're able to maintain that level much easier, which means when it comes to cycling into the racecraft, into strategy, they're able to offset their pace a little bit because they're faster by lifting, by coasting, by staying in that train, which is going to extend the stints ever so slightly, which is again going to play a factor into the strategy. It's all one big feedback loop that feeds everything into another, and that's why we love motorsport. That's why we love these endurance races. That's why we love Daytona month, because of that strategy element and just seeing how it all comes together towards the end. What I am going to point out though is that between the two Germans in GT3, between Spiegel and Roth, 31 thousandths of a second at the top end of the field.
It's no time at all. Very, very close, and that means we're going to have a lot of excitement here at Daytona. So we'll give you a quick run through of the current order with 5 minutes to go in this qualifying session. So starting with GT3s, because we're on board right now with the Mercedes of Matusiak. So it's Spiegel, as you say, on pole, 147.1, just 0.03 of a second ahead of Fabian Roth. It's Kokums in third, also in an Audi, 0.27 behind pole position, so that's less than 0.3 covering the top three. We've got Tarut returning in the Porsche, half a second off in P4, with Moreitis, the first of our Ferraris, in P5, again within a second of pole position, as is Salenga in 6th in the Audi. We've got Stahl 7th in the Porsche, Winstead 8th, the American in another Porsche. A little bit of a gap there in pace between 7th and 8th at the moment, so we could be looking at a top 7 train, if you like. Of course, it won't be that simple. Things will happen on the opening laps here, and things will break up, but it looks like we've got 7 drivers who may well be able to keep to that leading pace or close to it. But then you've got a bit of a gap. Winstead 8th, we've got Marakovic 9th in the BMW, and Prospini in 10th, another BMW. So a battle for best BMW is one to keep an eye on for sure in this race in GT3s. Looking at Hypercar then with 4 minutes to go, it's Mikovic on pole with a 134.4 in the Lamborghini. So the Lamborghini looking like a strong pick today, with Mosin second, 0.4 off the pace. Gra returning once again to the Hypercar class like we saw in Interlagos. Currently P3 in the BMW, 0.8 off the pole, so Mikovic is looking super strong. Jourdan is in 4th, that's Olivier Jourdan in second of our Lamborghinis, 1.2 off of pole position, ahead of Lasachuk in the BMW. We've got Gejerson in the Porsche P6, with Sipek 7th, Reed 8th, Creed 9th, and Boattinger rounding out our top 10 in another one of our Porsches. So plenty of cars close together. Of course, you can see all the other names there on the ticker as we go down further through the order. We've got 16 hypercars appearing and 19 GT3 cars. So lots of cars on track. That means we're going to have a lot of traffic to navigate throughout these 2.4 hours.
Yes, that is going to be something interesting. So at the moment, say on average, it's what 13-second differential between the prototypes and the GT3s. We're running what, say 110-second lap times. So it's going to be what, about they're going to lap once every 10 laps, let's say, if we round it ish. So it's not going to be very long, and it's going to be probably quite frequent with how many we've got, how many hypercars we've got and how many GT3 cars we've got. So it's going to be very, very busy out there on circuit. And again, when it comes to dealing with traffic, it's very difficult, to say the least. I'll be honest, again, I've not done it from the faster cars perspective. I have done it from a GT3 perspective. And all I can say is you are at the mercy of some of these guys, especially if it's close in the hypercars and they're pushing really, really hard. If you're in a GT3, all you can do is just stay on your line and hope that the racing gods are on your side, really, because traffic can give, traffic can very well and truly take as well. So, yeah, we'll have to see how this one plays out. Again, especially with some of the differentials that we've got. We've got some of the faster guys, maybe some of the less experienced guys, and in endurance racing, if you're inexperienced, good luck.
Absolutely. And it's going to be, as I say, a bit of a baptism of fire, I think, for some of our drivers out there today, especially those with less experience. And, that can work in both ways. It can teach you a lot. It can also, unfortunately, teach you some hard lessons if things go wrong. And it's just going to have to be something the drivers pay close attention to. We're now looking at one of the BMWs. Lovely looking, authentic BMW livery on that car. That's Moravchik in P7. In the BMW. He's top BMW at the moment. So this is one of our two BMWs that are split by just 0.03 of a second. Let's see if this is an improvement for Richard as he comes across the line. It is not an improvement, so stays 9th. 1 minute and 19 seconds to go in qualifying. He's actually going to just back out and maybe get another lap time. If we're able to finish the laps that we start, we should be able to get another lap time. But we'll just have to wait and see. And this is your third place Audi now of Christers Kokums, our Austrian. Only 2/10 off of pole position, so this is going to be one of those cars in that lead group. Of course, you can do some stuff with the strategy as well if you're in that slipstream. You can also lift and coast a little bit, save some fuel, potentially stretch out your strategy by a lap or two. You don't necessarily want to be leading at Daytona. That is a key that we have to consider here. It's not always the best position to be in P1, is it?
Yeah, I mean, quick question. Kokums is Latvian, is he not?
Oh, what did I say? Austrian?
I said Austrian. It took me back. I was like, whoa. Geography,
nope, ignore
not
me.
On point.
Ignore me.
Yeah.
Flag's not on point.
That's fine. I was like, whoa, am I wrong or what? I just wanted to
always assume it's me that's wrong. Always assume it's me.
No, class. No, the one that always gets me is Slovenia and Slovakia. I never know which one has the cross, or I think it's Slovakian that's a bit more meaty on the crest. That's the only way I can sort of explain it. There's a bit more to it. Yeah, it's fine. We'll get more wrong throughout the rest of the day. Just a few seconds left to go, and I don't think they're going to be able to finish their laps in qualifying. I think as soon as that timer ticks 0, we're going to get our grids, and right now it's looking very good for Mickey Vicks and very good for Spiegel as well.
It certainly is. Of course, qualifying not the be-all and end-all here at Daytona, but it does give us an indication of where the pace is going to be, who the main contenders are going to be. And unsurprisingly, perhaps, there are lots of familiar faces and names towards the top of the standings. We're looking at Marco Vosseler coming to cross the line. Actually, no, he's practicing pit lane entry, but that is going to be it. We're transitioning now from qualifying through to the race. It's a very fast transition. And it's going to be exciting. Zach, any predictions for lap 1? Do you think there's going to be chaos, or do you think the drivers are going to look after each other?
I think we're going to have the most well-behaved drivers in sim racing we've ever seen.
Do you?
No.
Are you willing to put money? Okay, yeah.
Absolutely not. And no way would I ever put money on people being behaved lap 1 at Daytona. No way.
No, I think I'm with you on that one. I'm afraid we're certainly we're going to see some action. And listen, I'm proven wrong, and I love to be proven wrong because I do often predict chaos on lap 1. But at the same time, I am also quite often proven right. So I think with hypercars and GT3s, you're going to have a mixture of pace, and I think more of the action is going to come when we have our first couple of experiences of lap traffic, because of course all the cars are bunched up towards the start of the race. It means that when we first come to lap traffic, generally you get these big packs, and for me it's always my favorite part of watching multi-class racing. Maybe I'm just maybe I just love the drama too much. Maybe that's a dark side of me that I'm exposing there. But I just love that moment when the hypercars are first weaving through all of the traffic and trying to pick a spot. It's very, very exciting. But we'll see what happens in the early stages. Anyway, it's going to be a rolling start here at Daytona. A reminder that this is a 2.4-hour race, so it's 144 minutes. We're going to see pit stops, we're going to see tire wear, we're going to see fuel usage, and we're going to see lots of exciting action. There is Alex Mosen on the front row in the special WRT liveried Shell BMW, behind Mikovic in the Lamborghini, and Gra lining up third in the other BMW in the more regular factory colours. Looking like we've also got I can assume that's a timing tower glitch in the bottom left. We've got a Ferrari, it looks like, on pole, Cornelli, but I don't believe that's going to be the case when the race starts, but we will, of course, keep an eye on that as we get ready to go here for the RaceRoom Daytona 2.4-hour special event here on the Traxion channel and the RaceRoom channel. I'm very excited. Look at those hypercars lining up, a great mixture of color and different manufacturers, and we've got a great representation in the GT3 class as well. We're coming up now to the start-finish line, and we're going to get the show on the road here at Daytona. You can see the drivers holding pace, coming towards the start line. 2 hours and 24 minutes on the clock, and we are underway. It's a nice and calm start, low speed heading into turn one. We already see covering from Moisen down the inside, covering off Gra and the other BMW as we head into this first corner, and it looks like everything's fairly neat and tidy here. We have Jordan holding on to fourth in the Lamborghini. In fact, no, he's down to fifth behind the BMW of Olisachuk. And I'm looking in the background, it looks so far, Zach, like everyone has got through cleanly.
Yeah, for now, let's have a look. Side by side in the battle for third position there. That's Gra and Elistrick as well in that battle for what is provisionally P3. Now the GT3s make their way through the International Horseshoe for the opening time. Side by side between that Star versus Winstead in the battle for P8. It's mostly single file throughout the majority of the field. Everyone's been able to settle in now through the kink for the first time. I don't think we're going to see too many major dramas going into the Western Horseshoe. I have to say, John, if we can survive lap one with no major dramas, it'll probably be the first time in a while that sim racing has surprised me.
well, don't speak too soon. Looks like we've got Reed dropping down the order a little bit, but it does look like everyone's still going through nice and safely. Fabian Roth now we're looking at in the third placed Audi, chasing down Kokums in the purple Audi as well. And you can see the gaps are small enough right now that the slipstream will hold drivers in place. Just look at that gap coming down between first and second in GT3. Spiegel to Kokums, that is what the slipstream does. So that gap was over 4 tenths as we headed onto the back straight, and already it's down to 2.5 tenths, and it's closing at a rapid rate of knots. Everyone navigating the Le Mans chicane nice and smoothly on the first lap. Very difficult, of course, to spot your line when you're following another car closely. We are going to see some side-by-side action, though, as Vossler on the outside. I don't know if that's defending P9 or going for P9. I think he was defending from Stahl in the Falcon liveried Porsche, but they sort it out before the corner, thankfully. Rexy getting through cleanly. And we see here how close the Audis are together. Now, if they're sensible, they'll work together. They'll make sure they stay with Spiegel, who will have strong pace. I wouldn't be surprised if these two Audis don't fight at the moment and just keep it all nice and tidy. As Jordan has unfortunately dropped a couple of spaces on that first lap. He's going to lose another one now to Bochinger in the Porsche. So Jordan's probably the biggest loser, down 4 spots. We had a spinner in the background. That looks like a BMW. I wonder if it was potentially Reed in the hypercar, or maybe it was Organ Donor. It looks like it was Reed who's dropping down the field now. So potentially our first casualty, but that was on lap 2, Zach. So yes, we were proven wrong. Excellent stuff.
Yeah, good stuff, guys, to be fair. It's still a long race to go, so still plenty of opportunities for these guys to prove us right. Really good stuff between Spiegel, Kokums, Roth, that top 3 in the GT3s in the opening phase of this race. I was surprised to see Roth actually try and go for the move on Kokums rather than sort of going for that bump draft. I'm not entirely sure as to how many incidents they get in this race. I would assume it's somewhere in the range of about 50, but I don't want to throw assumptions out there and state them as fact. Maybe that's sort of what it is, a bit of a risk mitigation from Roth, but definitely you want to be as close to Spiegel as you possibly can. Track position in and amongst that top 3, I'm going to say probably not that deep at this stage in the race, and especially for Roth. Why would you want to be second place in that train anyway at this stage? For the most part, though, people are just settling in, dealing with the opening lap sort of chaos and carnage of everyone being really close together, settling in, finding their rhythm, finding their groove, and then sort of start hitting their targets, see what they need to do for fuel, see what they need to do for tyres, and then just ride the wave into this race. Mate Mikovic, though, we talk about the GT3s being close. He's 2.1 seconds clear of Moisen in second.
Yeah, how did that happen? When did that happen? I mean, that's a huge gap to start off with. We know Mikovic has got the pace from qualifying, and it looks like actually the gap's coming back down now, so I don't know if that's just a little bit of uncertainty on the timing tower. We're going to keep an eye on it. We are seeing lots of quick fire position changes as well on that tower, so we've got lots of side-by-side actioning happening throughout the field. You can see there a little bit of a train forming, I should say, as we watch Lynn Flower now in P9 in the Jota livery. Porsche, and he gives a knock to Creed in the Lambo, and unfortunately that sends the Lamborghini spinning off. A bit of a lock-up there probably from Lynn Flower, it looked like, or maybe just a little bit deep on the brakes into the hairpin. Easily done, but unfortunately that one was a slam dunk. It was a clear mistake, and unfortunately it's cost the Lamborghini driver many positions. Drops back to 13th, does Creed, and we've got 3 Brits now between 13th and 15th. He'll be looking for a bit of a comeback run. This is very close at the top of GT3, Zach, very much replicating what we saw in qualifying. I was also surprised to see Kokums kind of making the move on Roth, or attempting to, but I wouldn't be surprised, I don't know if I want to lead at this point, if I'm Spiegel, to be honest. I think I'm quite happy to let these two Audis stick with me. Unless Spiegel thinks he's got some pace in the locker that we haven't been able to see yet, the Audis are fast enough that they can stay in that slipstream. And I don't know if I'd rather be second or third here and doing a bit of fuel saving. But we'll see if there's any sort of strategy like that comes into play here.
The interesting thing for me is that before Macau, because it'd been a while since I'd been a part of a RaceRoom broadcast, I sort of messaged him being like, well, what's the spiel? What's going on? He told me, back end of last year with Macau, I don't know if it's changed, but I wouldn't imagine it's too different. The Porsche not the best in terms of the straight line speed, which means Spiegel right now is doing a lot of heavy lifting, and in the Porsche especially, surely you would want to be second or third and maximize that slipstream towards the sharp end. But again, we'll have to wait and see. Maybe he's got a master plan that we're not expecting just yet. A swap of positions between Creed and Andric there across the line. That's going to be for what is 12th and 13th position in the prototypes. But yeah, again, if I was the Audis, I'd happily be able to sit behind unless there was some substantial pace difference that they had. But right now, what they're doing is they're, kind of working together. Their collective pace is pulling them away from the field, getting them away and minimizing the variables of those behind. Nonetheless, though, it is going to invite a bit of a battle towards the sharp end of the field, because here comes Fabian Roth to the outside of Spiegel towards turn number 1.
It's exactly what we want to see as spectators. I'm not sure if it's what they want to see, but Roth's going to go for that outside move. Is he going to make the move on Spiegel? Not this time. He's going to tuck in behind the Porsche. Sensible stuff from both, and good to see. Kokums just about hanging on, 0.8 off, so you could just see how effective the slipstream was for Roth when he really got close to the back of Spiegel. And I wonder if those two will now try and escape, actually. I wouldn't, just because the two drivers in the Audi doesn't mean, of course, they're teammates or they're working together. These drivers at the top of their game will know each other quite well, and, we could see different tactics forming between different manufacturers. We're just going to have to see how it plays out. But right now, Kokums is going to be really focused on closing that gap. And to be fair, already got it down to about 0.7 as well. And you can see they're very, very close together. They've definitely dropped Tarut in the Porsche P4, and Winstead doing a great job also in P5. Just to note as well, I saw Bottinger and Kratoshvili drop down together in the Porsches to the back of the hypercar field. I do wonder if there was contact between the two Porsche drivers, because they both seemed to drop at the same moment, which was really unfortunate, but we won't be able to find out until a little bit later on. You can now see the two battling BMWs. Damien Reed, who's been in strife already this race. In fact, that's actually Reed closing in on the back of Andrich at the moment. So that's Sasha Andrich in the kind of the special edition 75th anniversary liveried Porsche on the inside with the rainbow colours. Reed's going to look to the outside, and meanwhile looking to the outside is Fabian Roth, because he's taking the lead, and there's contact between Roth and Spiegel. Roth goes around, and that's exactly what Fabian Roth did not need to happen this early on in the race. Plenty of time to come back, but he's going to lose that front group, and he's going to have to work very, very hard to get it back. I think Spiegel's gotten away with it, though. Meanwhile, here goes Winstead through from about 5th position all the way up to 2nd. So it all changes in an instant here in GT3.
Yeah, well, there we go. Sim racing has once again ceased not to surprise me in the slightest. It is exactly what we'd expect in terms of the carnage and chaos that sort of always happens here at Daytona. Side by side, you've got Moratis on the outside of Tarut. There comes Christos Kokums, the Latvian, trying to go around the outside of Winstead through turn number 1. Nicely done from the R8 to try and consolidate that position. Obviously, Spiegel wanted this opportunity to get away, get out of that slipstream, try and run away as best he can. He's teetering on the edge of about 0.9 of a second. Well, that's now very quickly dropped to 0.7, so I don't think he's quite out of the woods yet. Interesting from Fabian Roth. He has been able to save himself to some extent. He is still in P7, still maybe in the fight. Oh my goodness me, nearly a monumental crash there from Sasha Andrich, who has to go on at the Le Mans chicane, able to cut through probably with a substantial slowdown, I would imagine, down in P12 for the Porsche. But big news in the GT3s. This early on in the race, going for a move around the outside of the bus stop chicane. I'm not the best driver in the world, John, but probably not what I would do.
Probably not, but I always say what I'm not going to do. in a race or on a stage, and I instantly go against it because racing drivers, you know,
You manifest it.
You do, and it's like, I'll be careful. I'm not going to go for anything crazy. I'm not going to. Oh, there's an opportunity. I want to win. I'm going for it. And that's what we saw. Great job, first of all, from our producers and director behind the scenes to catch that moment there for that position change for the lead. But unfortunately, we didn't quite get enough context to see, you know, who was at fault or if there, you know, why the contact actually occurred. We just saw that they were basically side by side on the way in, and it didn't end well. Thankfully, I mean, it could have been a lot worse. We didn't see Roth in the barriers. Roth will close in that gap to Slenga and Taru. For that kind of, there's a big train at the moment between 2nd and 6th, but the problem is here, if Spiegel can just break that slipstream as Winstead applies the pressure to Kokums, you can see now, because it's over 7/10, Kokums really isn't closing in on Spiegel very quickly at all, and that is what we were talking about, that opportunity. There's some good teamwork, as we see, unfortunately, a flashing Ferrari behind, which is making things a little bit confusing, but good teamwork there from the Audi and the Porsche, pushing each other along, just trying to gather as much speed as possible, and that's what this race is all about. At Daytona, sometimes you have to find the car around you and decide to, even without speaking to them, just decide, you know what, we're teaming up here, we need to close in the cars in front, and there's a lot of mental gymnastics that take place. I am very excited to see Roth try and make his way through the field, because he's only 3.5 seconds off the lead, and hopefully with no damage to any of these cars, we should still have a great battle, and that's going to be something we will certainly be keeping an eye on as we go on here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when it comes to Daytona, and you're right, that mutual respect. I remember the one that we all did a couple of weeks ago. There was a team that were, you know, at the time we were struggling. There was a team that was a couple of laps ahead of us, and what they were able to do were obviously type in the chat, and you know, we were close, and they were like, "Do you want to go through?" And we were like, "Yes, please. We'll give you a tow." And they literally pulled over on the tri-oval, lifted off, tucked back in, and stayed with us for about 45 minutes, I would like to say. And that's what, you know, that's the sort of the mutual respect. I don't want to say teamwork, because you're not on the same team as such, but that mutual camaraderie, just to sort of say, let's put our differences aside for a moment. Let's have a little bit of a truce and work together to go forward. Because, you know, right now for Fabian Roth, right, he doesn't want to finish 6th. He knows that he deserves more than 6th, and he knows there's still 2 hours and 13 minutes left to go in this race. He knows there is more to be had, so he's not going to be too fussed about battling really hard at this stage. He wants to try and drive himself back onto the back of that lead train, because it is still possible. Same what we're seeing here. Vossler on the back of Stoll very easily could pull out to the right and draw alongside. That isn't the case. The pair of them can maybe still see there is more to go and catch, even if they are a little bit of the ways off the pack. The only way they are going to be able to get themselves back in this race is if they work together. Although by the time we reach turn number 1, let's see if there is still going to be a bit of a truce between them as we start to get our first bit of traffic. I've just been complete. I'm just going to eat my words here, because down the inside goes Vossler to take what is 7th position as one of the Lamborghinis tries to cut through the traffic. Nicely done. I think that is Mate Mikovic now making his way through the traffic.
Just luring him into a false sense of security. Yeah, we're a team, we're working together, don't worry. And boom, just like the traitors in there. And the murder has been committed. But Stahl will live to fight another day, and of course Stahl will now have the slipstream, and he won't forget what just happened in turn 1. I mean, don't get me wrong, it was a great move. It was a fantastic move. I'm just not sure it's something that needs to be done at this stage. I think these drivers also will quickly develop an understanding of how fast the other driver is, whether they work well out in front, whether they, you know, sometimes drivers actually drive better behind someone else. I know I'm quite a good chaser, and as soon as I get out in front, I panic and start missing apexes and all sorts of stuff. So different drivers have different strengths, and they will, of course, learn that about each other. Kokums, meanwhile, is sticking with Spiegel, which is good to see. We saw Roth get past Moraitis in the Ferrari, so he's only 4 seconds off the lead at the moment, so one to keep an eye on there. You can see in the background you've got the Audi of Slenga and then Roth just about making it into shot. I do want to make a couple of observations here. We have, it looks like Artur Graz dropped back to P11, so that's one of our kind of fastest contenders in the BMW. Quite far back down the field, unfortunately. We look at now Organ Donor in P9 in the BMW. And, I mean, it's crazy to see the gap between Mosen in 2nd and Sipek in 3rd is 15 seconds in the hypercar class. And, oh, that's a huge crash for one of the Porsches. Not sure who that was in the Manthey liveried car, but that was a monumental shunt there through the traffic, and that's going to cost a lot of positions and probably a lot of damage on that Porsche. I believe that may have been Selinger in dropping down through the order now out. Yeah. And I think that's going to be a DNF, unfortunately. Not the only car to come to grief as well. We've also seen Monty Verstappen, unfortunately, in the BMW, parked up in the pits 2 laps down. So a couple of casualties that we saw there, Zach, and that was fairly dramatic.
Yes. fireworks. I mean, usually the fireworks at Daytona are, you know, saved towards the end, but yeah, that was interesting to say the least. Not something I've particularly ever seen. There's Oliver Jourdain, the Frenchman in the Lamborghini, currently on the back of Creed, trying to stay with, of course, that battle towards the sharp end of the field. A bit further back, we've got, of course, some of the prototypes starting their way through the traffic. We've got Donor and Bottinger just in behind that. That's P8 and P9, again, slicing their way through the traffic. You have also got Bukowski just in behind that in the other Porsche, trying to draw side by side through the International Horseshoe while they lap the little brother, I suppose, the Porsche GT3, as that was Chad Winstead that had the issue in the Mount Livery Porsche into the pit lane, and understandably, I would imagine, a DNF from this race. A big shame, of course, but, well, Daytona is brutal, and expect the unexpected.
Yeah, apologies for calling that wrong there. I saw another Porsche dropping down at the same time, which is confused me a little bit there. But I mean, that's absolutely devastating for Winstead, who was right up in that top battle, doing a fantastic job so far in this race. And unfortunately, with over 2 hours to go, it's already come to an end. But that is sim racing; it's what happens. And I'm sure he will regroup and go again. But we now look at Oregon Donor, who's up to P8, so more progress now from the BMW. However, there's a lot of pressure behind there, Zach. I see two Penske Porsches, the recovering Bottinger and also Bukowski in the second of the Porsches. A little bit wide, though, on entry there from Bottinger, and that's going to definitely offer an opportunity for Bukowski to come through on this run down through towards the tri-oval and towards the start-finish line. Will the Porsche Penske take it, or will the two of them work together to try and build up the speed and close back in on Donor? We'll have to wait and see, but I'm sure we'll find out in the next 10-15 seconds or so.
Yeah, I wonder if Porsche Penske are going to have similar success in the virtual world as they have in the real world. Is it 3 in a row now for Porsche Penske?
I believe it is. It's at least 3 in a row, and they've had to work very hard for them, haven't they?
Absolutely.
Not looking so good at the moment, as you see there, the Porsche diving through the middle of the traffic there. That's the battle for P3 in the GT3 category, and that was a pretty close call. And we see a bit of contact there potentially between Salinger and Tarut up ahead in the white and pink Porsche. But it's not looking so good for Porsche at the moment in Hypercar in terms of a race win, simply because the first of our Porsches is already 24 seconds off the lead. Long way to go, and that's not to say that there won't be fireworks ahead, and third position is already a great spot. But in terms of outright pace for the win, it's not necessarily looking like a Penske Porsche is the favourite at the moment.
No, it definitely looks to be the case of the Lamborghini, Mikovic. I mean, looking at the drivers that we've got in that prototype field, you know, you'd probably lean towards a driver like Matej Mikovic, who historically in RaceRoom has been just ridiculously rapid. I mean, no matter what he does, whether that's the likes of 666 Motorsport in terms of touring cars, in terms of RaceRoom special events, in terms of championships that he's competed in, Matej Mikovic is towards the sharp end of almost any field that he competes in. So coming into this one, which is, you know, slightly shaken up in terms of the driver skill level, he is obviously going to be up there towards the front end of the field. We've got Spiegel and Kokum that are very, very close in terms of pace. So you have also got Tarut and Salinger. This the battle for P3. Also as well, Roth closing back in, the recovering Roth as well. The Audi R8 pulls to the left-hand side. The space opens up towards Turn 1. He's going to try and go for 2 in the same corner. Down the inside goes Fabian Roth to take what is 4th position. The Porsche, though, trying to go around the outside. That, of course, is Tarut, who keeps his foot in quite nicely. It must be said. The Audi R8, of course, will have to go the long way around by the time they reach the International Horseshoe. Later on the brakes from the Audi, but the inside line favouring Tarut, who just is going to be able to hang on to this one. I think he's going to edge himself in front and keeps all of that Porsche GT3 in front of the R8, battling very hard, considering we've not even ticked sub 2 hours left to go.
Great driving all around there. I mean, first of all, superb attempt at the move from Roth. He did make a position, almost made it stick, of course, on both cars, going from 5th to 3rd. But you have to give massive credit to Tarut for his defensive positioning there. Just put the car in the right places where he needed to. Nothing bad or nothing close to the limit there in terms of driving standards. It was just great stuff from those two. And I think you can't really blame Lucas Salinger for backing off either in P5 and just making sure he got through there unscathed. It has to be said, though, I mean, Roth was down to 2.5 seconds off the lead in that situation. So what I'm going to say is Roth is proving he's got the pace in the locker to get this gap back down to Spiegel in P1, as we now have a look at Tom Pratt in P16. That's a bit of contact there, unfortunately, with the BMW behind. Not quite sure who that was, but both cars come to grief through turn 1, which is unfortunate to see. We flip back, though, to Philip Spiegel, and yep, he's broken the slipstream from Kokum, so it's 1.1 seconds there, but I don't think that's the concern right now. I think the concern is the pace of Roth and the speed of which Roth is getting through the traffic. Maybe the slipstream's helping, maybe it's just Roth's outright speed, but that will definitely be something to continue to keep an eye on as we go through this race.
Yeah, 100%. Spiegel, of course, had the raw pace in qualifying, not by much, but it's that consistency. Can you bash out, you know, lap times within sort of a tenth or so? I always say if you're really consistent, you've got a margin of about a tenth and a half, plus or minus, right? In terms of, you know, over the course of a stint. If you're able to bash out that consistently, obviously with mitigating circumstances like traffic and things coming into play, but in clear air, if you're able to run in a similar run to that, then you're looking pretty good. Now that's sort of what I would expect to see from Spiegel, and what I think we are seeing from Spiegel, especially in the early phase of this race. But still with traffic, still with strategy to pile in, there's still plenty more opportunity for Kokums to get back into the mix. On board though with our current race leader of Alex Mosen, because Matej Mikovic has lost the lead and is now tumbling down a few seconds behind the German through the Le Mans chicane and onto the driver once again. I mean, the staggering speed that these prototypes are taking. Again, it's one of those things like, you know, I like a GT3. I like, you know, sort of still a downforce car, but the lower downforce, you know, the likes of an F4 or adjacent to an LMP3 maybe. These cars are just, they have so much grip, so much speed. I don't understand how these guys are able to hold them on the limit, because to me, I don't understand where the limit is because of just how quick they are. Maybe it's a skill issue on my part, but I have a lot of respect for guys that are quick in the prototypes.
I think it all comes down to relativity, really. I think when you're driving one of these faster cars with more downforce, everything's happening at a faster pace. So you've so quickly tuned into the speed of the car and the grip that you've got that it almost feels the same, if that makes sense. So because you're carrying more speed in, but you've got more downforce and better braking performance, it doesn't actually feel that much different to drive. You just have to adjust your style a little bit to suit these cars. It's definitely more likely, you know, when it does go wrong, to go wrong in a big way, let's say, when you're driving these hypercars. But, you know, they are cars that take a lot of getting used to, but once you get into the rhythm with them, they are very satisfying to drive and rewarding. And there's a lot of strategy that goes into driving these cars, not just in terms of getting pace out of them, but looking after your tyres and avoiding mistakes, and also, of course, your energy saving and your fuel saving, which is going to be a consideration now as we enter around about the halfway point in these opening hypercar stints. We're seeing Matthias Stahl being pushed along now from the Porsche of Tarou, who's dropped back to P7 in all of that. So there's been some problems there for Tarou for sure, dropping from that battle for P3 all the way down. Just looking as well at the order here, we've got Spiegels from Kokums, Fabian Roth 6.5 seconds off the lead, so that gap has gone up a lot. We can see now that the Audi's behind the Ferrari, so I do wonder if we've had an accident there between probably Roth and Tarou, as Roth makes another mistake in the Audi, so dropping more time now. So that gap was down to 3.5 seconds to the lead. Zach, it's now 8.2 seconds, so that's going to be fairly influential. We'll also at some point need to see what tyres these drivers are on, and remember that some drivers could be on softer compounds, which could explain pace differences, but will of course have a compromise when it comes to pit stops. So plenty of things to keep an eye on. Sorry, before I jump to you there, Mikovic has lost the lead. He's 4.4 seconds off of Mosen in P1, so there's been a change of lead at the front of Hypercar.
Yeah, it was the case. I think about a lap or two ago, Alex Mosen, when we were on board with him, actually was in the lead by a few seconds. There is Matej Mikovic in the Lamborghini coming out of the Western Horseshoe. There you can see Alex Mosen now going through what is turn 7, that one that leads you onto the oval through NASCAR 1 and 2, and he has got a 3.6 second lead. So I'm not entirely sure as to what happens to Matej Mikovic, but we'll have to see how he can recover throughout the rest of the duration of this race. And yeah, for Fabian Roth, I'll be honest, I think he is just overdriving, right? He's frustrated, he's annoyed, maybe at himself, maybe at someone else, at the race circumstance in of itself. You know, a lot of these drivers coming into this race on edge, you know, the adrenaline was spiking even before the practice, even before qualifying. So for a lot of them coming into this, you know, that mental game was well and truly there. And I think for Fabian Roth, that is playing a huge factor in his driving, because we saw that he was just broke a little bit too hard into the Western Horseshoe, trail braked a little bit too quickly. That's then what spun him around. Then it becomes that feedback loop. And he needs to be careful now. He needs to nip it in the bud, get himself back on it, get back into a consistent rhythm, because 9 seconds, fair enough, it is a relatively big gap, but it is still closable with the time that we've got left in this race. But it has to start right here, right now. In terms of battles that we got through the field, we've got the likes of Reed, Bukowski in terms of the prototypes. Also here, side by side for P11, the Ukrainian of Razimov and Matusiak, the Ukrainian versus the Polish driver. They go side by side on that run towards turn number 1, and the Porsche well and truly firmly ahead as we take closer and closer to going sub 2 hours in this race. Like you say, in probably about 20 minutes or so, I'd imagine we'll start to see those DPIs make their way in.
We certainly will.
Oh, sorry, not DPIs, LMDHs.
Oh, We're looking now, continue to look at the Porsche of Advi Razumov, who has made that move we just saw on screen on the Mercedes of Matusiak. The pink Mercedes you see there in the background, and we saw some hypercar darting just then going onto the trial. But it's tricky to kind of pick your spots here, and that's one thing that the hypercars are going to have to be aware of. They're coming up to lap these GT3 cars, but the GT3 cars have every right to stick and hold their line and let the hypercars find their way around. So if they're battling for position, it's down to the hypercar to play it sensibly and avoid any incidents, and that's why we see the odd bit of darting here and there from the hypercars. They try to predict what the GT3 is going to do next, but of course these drivers have every right in GT3 to take their line and fight things off. They just have to keep one eye on the mirror and make sure they don't do anything too unpredictable. I think that's a key difference between the likes of Formula One, as we potentially see contact there between the Porsche in the background and the Mercedes. But yeah, it's very different to Formula One, the way blue flags work. So if you're coming from more of a sprint race background, you might look at blue flags and think, well, in Formula One, a driver that's being lapped has to essentially get out of the way of the cars behind, but it's definitely not the case in endurance and sports car racing. It's very much up to the car behind to make a safe move and pick their time. So you can't go for any crazy dive bombs. You've got to be careful. And of course, the speed difference does come into play, certainly with Hypercar and GT3, and especially on a fast track like Daytona, we see some really, really big closing speeds, and we've already witnessed a few close calls and a few big accidents in the first 24 minutes of this race. As the clock ticks down now, we are under the 2 hour, well, under 2 hours remaining of the Daytona 2.4 hour, and it's beginning to just settle down into a little bit of rhythm. We're seeing these gaps emerge, and a reminder that it's Mosin in the BMW who leads from Mikiewicz, who's dropping further and further away in that second place Lamborghini. In GT3, it's Spiegel in the Porsche, from Kokums in second in the Audi, and Salenga in third in another Audi, 5.3 seconds off the pace. But lots and lots of time for everything to change here.
100%, yeah. I mean, 2 hours is a relatively long amount of time. Don't get me wrong, it's not a full-on endurance. There is still a lot of elements of sprint racing to go with it. But yeah, strategy is still there. Consistency is still going to play a big factor. There is our race leader now making its way. That's Fabian Roth, I believe. He's now making his way through. That's a battle with Moratis for fourth position. They are a little bit of a ways off the rest of the pack. 9.3 seconds, though, only off the race lead. Considering the day that Roth has had in the opening phase of this race, I would say 9.3 seconds is pretty fortunate and still very much recoverable. There is that battle as we cut away from the race leader overall, and of course in the LMDHs, Fabian Roth trying to stay in front of the Greek driver as he's able to get through down in towards turn and one. Nicely done from the blue and white Audi R8 machine as he recovers an extra position and now has his sights on his two Audi teammates. I don't know.
Compatriots? Any words?
Maybe? I don't know. Something, comrade? No, that doesn't quite work. The Audi car sharers, I guess, they picked the same brand when they signed up for the race. 3 seconds to Salenga to get himself back onto the podium.
Of course, no brand affinity whatsoever with these individual special events, so drivers can pick any car they want, and they may not necessarily have anything to do with other drivers in the same manufacturers, so do bear that in mind. Roth, you said he needed to calm down, he needed to get his rhythm and just chill out and just begin to chip away again, and that's exactly what Fabian Roth is doing in the Audi. Got the gap down to the low 8 seconds. It's still hovering between 8 and 9 seconds. There's a little bit of variation here on the timing tower as we see, I believe that's Mikiewicz coming through now to pass these guys once again. But Roth seems to have steadied the ship. We know Fabian's got the pace. A couple of mistakes out of the way, out of the system, and plenty of time to get that gap back down, and of course lots of strategy to play it as well. So it's looking okay for Roth at the moment. Just needs to try and eliminate those mistakes, try and be a little bit more careful under braking and keep things together. It looks like the Ferrari just behind there trying desperately to hang on to that slipstream, but not quite making it work. I think there's a bit of damage on the front of that Ferrari as well. We will begin to see some battered up GT3 and hypercars as this race continues on, but we've got the Lamborghini now on screen of Olivier Jourdan. So that is our third Lamborghini now, as Creed has made a fantastic recovery run back up to P5 in the other Lamborghini. We've also got the positions on screen for how many positions gained or lost from the start, and you can see some big movers. We've got organ donor up 7 spots, fantastic, big green number on there. Elastic unfortunately has dropped 7 spots in the BMW. In GT3, our biggest movers look like, and it's actually Vossler on his own now, 5 spots, just passes Stefan Theroux for P7 there in the Porsche, and Theroux continues to drop more spots, so I do wonder if Theroux has come into strife there. So we'll have to keep an eye on that one. Meanwhile, Kokum's picking his way through GT3 traffic, but the BMW gets out the way nicely of the purple Audi. Kokem's not quite hanging on to the back of Spiegel, is he, Zach? I mean, 2 seconds after half an hour of racing is almost nothing, but I just don't quite think Christers Kokem's has got that speed right now, especially considering if he did have the speed, he had the slipstream too, so he would have had to have dropped, you know, a bit more away from Spiegel. I guess we will see raw pace now, though, the gap's 2 seconds, because slipstream doesn't come into it.
Yeah, that is very true. Obviously, 2 seconds after half an hour, you know, it's not a lot, but it definitely is something. As a sense to the inside from the Porsche of Bukowski, nicely done to the inside of Jourdan. That's through the International Horseshoe, and a pretty textbook, pretty plain sailing move, it must be said. Nicely done from the Hungarian to go through and up into 8th position. But yeah, in the form of Kokem's, we are going to start to see that raw pace come in. Obviously, there was that battle, Roth going rounds, that obviously dropped Kokem's into the pack ever so slightly, and of course allowed Spiegel to get away a little bit. But even after that, Kokem's was still in the slipstream, and I think Spiegel just has had that raw consistency to chip away. A very hard task to do, to get out of the slipstream at Daytona. You really have to maximise that infield section. You have to be significantly quicker to offset that gain that the driver will then re-get onto the oval and through the tri-oval at the end of the lap. So I have to say, really good stuff from Philipp Spiegel to get into the race lead and to continue to extend that gap. And I think, again, mitigating circumstances aside, on raw pace, currently it is looking the way of the Porsche starting to run away with things, because again, the Porsche straight line speed of the Porsche doesn't now have the huge disadvantage that comes from having someone in the slipstream. So he's really able to maximize the twisty nature, I guess, the twisty strengths of the Porsche through the twisty stuff, as here comes side by side between the two BMWs, Doner and Reed.
Yeah, Reed making that move stick, and it's up to P6. The two recovering BMWs have kind of been together for most of this race, really, since early instance. We see a Porsche Penske off in the background. Don't know if that is a car that's there for position. Is that Bukowski? I think it might be Bukowski, who has come to strife in turn 1. Speaking of strife, Organ Donor loses the rear, but manages to gather it, and that splits up the two BMWs for the time being. So a couple of incidents in a couple of corners there for two of our top 10 hypercar runners. We also saw Stefan Theroux in the pits earlier in the Porsche, but looks to have left the pits. I was going to say, GT3 cars, at this point, Zach, if you want to do something different with your strategy, you could come in early, because we've got less than 2 hours to go of this race. That means that you can get to the end from now on and with one more stop. So we could see some more drivers take to pit lane and try something a little bit different, get out of sync. As we cut back to Fabian Roth, I got a fright there. It looked like Roth was spinning, but I believe it's just a little bit of lag for the Audi. That certainly caught my attention, but I do wonder if Theroux's come in for a tactical pit stop there, or whether he had some issues. He's definitely back out and running now, though, 2 minutes and 12 seconds off the lead.
Yeah, it did seem that there was it was a bit, sort of longer than usual, but we'll have to wait and see. The only thing that I would have with coming in early, if it is a change of strategy, is that obviously they've been running, say they put in 120 litres, a full tank at the start, they've been running on that weight, for the race so far. So by coming in early, they're sort of, throwing that in the bin and saying, well, I could have just had a lighter car for this stage of the race anyway. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a couple of people having started on less fuel to come in a bit earlier. But then again, I don't know why you would. If you're close to another car in front, surely you'd want to stay as close to them as possible to maximise that slipstream. I wouldn't see many people doing something different purely because they wouldn't want to run by themselves. That being said, that's in an ideal situation. We haven't had an ideal situation. We've got some fairly large gaps, which I guess opens the door in terms of strategy to sort of say, well, you're not going to get the slipstream anyway, kind of do what you want. But yeah, I think maybe we could see a couple of people coming in very soon. Obviously, notably, it will be the LMDHs that will be coming in before anyone, you would imagine. Again, we'll just have to wait and see how it plays out, who comes in when, if they all come in on similar laps, if there is a bit of a pit window as such in terms of the LMDHs, and what sort of a difference that's going to make in terms of the overall running of things. Because currently we've got a 9-second gap between Mosen and Mikiewicz. We've then got, what is that, a 27-second gap between Mikiewicz and Sepeg, and then a further 14 seconds back to that is Gijerson for the battle for the podium. So pretty substantial gaps in terms of the key positions in each of the races, which means that we kind of really are relying on strategy to close things up again.
Some lonely drivers out there, it looks like, at the moment. In these cars, as we see, once again, getting a little bit of a fright from something I'm seeing with the broadcast, but I think, again, it's just a few lagging cars there, unfortunately. We go back to Organ Donor in P7 in the BMW. And yeah, I think you're right. Daytona's not the kind of place where you really get held up. You more just drag along someone who's slower than you, if that makes sense. So, you know, it's quite easy. If you want to get past someone that you're faster than, with the slipstream, you can time it and you can get it done. You don't necessarily, like Macau, get held up until someone makes a mistake, or you can force a move down the inside. So it's one of those situations where you might just drag that person along with you as they go past. So it is different tactically, and you're right. It would encourage me to stay out a little bit longer and just try and find that pack of cars that are around about my pace, or ideally slightly faster, so they could pull me along. Meanwhile, we see Damien Reid coming in for a pit stop. We're 34 minutes into the race, so it's quite early for the BMW driver, and with an hour and 50 minutes to go, that's going to be a very tough one for Damien to be able to get to the end, and now on 2 more stops. So we'll have to pay close attention there. 1 more stop, I should say, after this. So it might be an early stop there for Damien Reid, whether it's just offsetting the strategy or whether there's other reasons behind that one. We'll have to see how it plays out. But it was a fantastic drive back through the field for Reid until that point.
It was indeed. So we'll see if that can continue. I am just trying to look in the RaceRoom Discord for the strategy guide. Here we go. I've got it. Because there was a very helpful from Bruno Burchik that put in a whole essay really on the strategy. Just having a quick flick through that and see what we'd expect. I think we're looking in the region of about 40 minutes in terms of the hypercars. Of course, there is the element of the virtual energy that they get. They can use 4% over the course of a lap. Of course, they can use that over the stint. So that, again, is an extra sort of variable to throw into things. I think from what I can see, most people will be on the mediums doing about, it says here, 4 stops for the hypercar, so that will be interesting. Loads of different things that can go wrong with that. That's 4 times you have to enter and exit pit lane on cold tyres as well, which again on hypercar is very sensitive. That again could very much open the door for things. So again, I'll have a flick through this document and maybe get back to you as to what we can expect.
Yes, I'll leave you to your paperwork there to try and get an understanding. But I think with these things, we're basically going to see what happens. Of course, with this being a community event as well as it turned into the Daytona 2.4, we have lots of drivers here, and some will have very meticulous strategies planned out, and other ones will just be in for a bit of fun, and we'll see what happens, and I'll just be making up the strategy as they go along. So we're going to have a variety of things happening out there on circuit, and of course, it always helps to be prepared for these longer endurance races, and that is exactly what it looks like for Spiegel. He's built up a bit of a gap now from Kokums, 4.5 seconds ahead of the Audi, who's actually coming under a little bit of pressure, it has to be said, from Salinger in the second of our Audis. Meanwhile, Fabian Roth closing in on the other 2 Audis, now down to 7.8 seconds between Spiegel and Roth. So again, Roth proving that the pace is there, just needs to minimize those mistakes, and we could see the Audi slowly close back in on Spiegel. We are expecting the hypercar pit stops to start a bit more regularly in maybe around 5 or 10 minutes. So I do think, because it's only 40-minute stints, they are going to have to make that extra stop than what you might expect in other races. I think that's maybe what Damien Reid's just done, committed to the extra stop early, come in a little bit earlier, offset the strategy, and take it from there. But it was, as I say, a great run through the field. Speaking of good runs through the field, CPEC in 3rd place has done a great job to get up to P3, one of our biggest movers in the hypercar field. 38 seconds off the lead, yes, but our top Porsche, and that'll be a target for CPEC to chase for this race, and also, of course, a lovely podium position to try and achieve. This is the man who leads at the moment, though. It's Alex Mosen in the Shell BMW. We see another BMW off in the background there, one of our hypercars. Not sure who that was, but someone was stationary at turn 1. So we'll see if there's any changes in position. But things are beginning to kind of stretch out as we see our leaders now coming into pit. So this is the start of our scheduled pit stops. As Mosen comes in, Mikiewicz will take the lead again, and there are a few hypercars on pit road, Zach.
There are indeed. So Mikiewicz going for the extra lap. That, of course, is, I would say, playing to his advantage, especially when... Oh, no, he's coming in anyway. There we go. Yeah. No, it's fine. Brilliant. So he's coming in. So the top 2 on the same strategy. Now, from what I've been able to tell, they are not going to be changing tyres. They're on the mediums. I don't think they're going to change tyres at the very least for the first stop. They may do half and half on a set, purely because it takes somewhere in the region of about 27 to 30 seconds to change the tyres. You can't do it while you're fueling, which of course is very handy under that rule set. But you do have to, of course, wait quite a long time to get those tyres changed. And the offset at a circuit like Daytona, I don't think fresh tyres are going to be hugely beneficial. Definitely not over the course of 40 minutes to gain nearly 30 seconds of track time, unless they are completely shot. And from what I can read, under 50% tyre wear, well, if it's above 50% tyre wear, you're going to be all right, from what I can interpret. So we'll have to wait and see how that one's going to play out. I don't think we are going to see any changes in terms of tyres in terms of this, and a fairly nice textbook stop from Alex Mosen there. CPEC, though, talking of big movers, goes a lap later than the leaders. So, give it an hour and 40 minutes where we really get to the end of the race. Maybe this offset strategy really comes to help the Czech driver.
Yeah, that could be up to 3 or even 4 laps additional running. And whether that means 1 pit stop less, I mean, let's see if CPEC actually pits this time, because that'll be key if the Porsche Penske driver can eke out 2 laps. The problem being, of course, 40 seconds off the lead is a lot of time to lose, and you will actually lose a pit stop quite easily with that pace, so it's a tricky one. Meanwhile, I wanted to see what the gap would be between Mosen and Mikovic. It looks like it's pretty much status quo. Very, very similar to what it is when the 2 drivers came into the pit lane, which means that they're probably on the same tyre and fuel strategy, at least in terms of not taking tyres and both taking a similar amount of fuel. So not a massive surprise, but it's as we were, if you like. Olivier Jourdan, though, looks like he's just in front of Mosen in terms of track position at the moment, so that could come into play. And it is only 1 extra lap from Roman CPEC, so definitely these drivers looking to extend as far as they can. I believe this lap might be the longest you can go without doing crazy fuel saving, which we have seen in the past. Meanwhile, as CPEC pulls in, Mosen gets past Jourdan, and there they are. The BMW past the Lamborghini into the Le Mans chicane, and just in the background there they are, the black and gold Lamborghini of Mikovic coming through the traffic, about 6 or 7 seconds off the back.
I promised the chat we were not going to continue the Macau 6-7 jokes. I'm not entirely sure if that was intentional from John. But,
thankfully, I'd forgotten about that.
No, yeah, so had I, up until the point that I remembered about Macau. No, it's awful. It's just been ingrained in my head now. It's just easier to find it funny, I think, but I don't think... Today of all days, we'll spare them from continuing that. An hour and 44 left to go in this race. Alex Mosen is our race leader, of course, after coming in a couple of laps ago. He's just ahead of Jourdan, who owes us a pit stop. Matej Mikovic is the net P2 driver, if you will. He's 6.1 seconds behind Mosen. Raw pace, I would probably back both drivers to be fairly similar. Mikovic, we haven't got the context. We were unsure as to what happened to him. But yeah, uncharacteristic nonetheless to have lost the lead in such a way. Maybe it was traffic, maybe it was a mistake nonetheless, as that Porsche very much darts out of the way. A very generous Porsche. The last couple of times we've seen that 1B laps taken to the grass to allow the LMDHs to go through. Nonetheless, though, you have to say Mosen, he's been, I don't want to say given this opportunity, but he's had this opportunity to take the race lead. And he's consolidating it very, very well. I know there's still a lot of race left to go, but a lot of drivers in his position would be very quick to panic and go, oh, I'm in the race lead now, what am I going to do? But he's stuck with the strategy. He came in when he needed to. He's kept that consistency, keeping his calm at least for the moment. And you've got to applaud that. Fair play. I mean, he didn't, qualify in pole or anything like that, but he has been able to drive himself into a position now to be contending for the race lead. Yeah,
the pace is clearly good from Mosen. How good compared to Mikovic? I think really we're going to see that come to fruition later in the race, because Mikovic did have that clear advantage, as to be said, in qualifying. You'd put your money on Mikovic here, and as you say, we don't know what happened. We missed that, unfortunately, on broadcast, but 6.6 seconds is not huge. It just looks like Mosen is managing to essentially stem that gap to some degree. So we'll keep an eye on it. We'll see what happens. Speaking of gaps that we've been keeping an eye on, Roth 7.7 seconds off Spiegel now, so that is pretty stable, it has to be said, Zach. It's not gone up, it's actually come down very slightly, but I mean very, very slightly, and that just points further towards the fact that Roth will be rueing those earlier mistakes, because it just looks like the two of them are so closely matched. We did see Roth begin to just close that gap in a little bit, but then of course maybe it's traffic, it's getting held up, it's one small mistake, whatever it might be, and that instantly just goes back up. So it's superb consistency, it has to be said, from Spiegel. But that is Roth now up into P3, so we see him take the position from Salenga, who runs wide in the Audi and basically lets Roth have that one. I think that's the sensible thing to do at this stage, Zach. It's not maybe the most exciting for us as viewers, but he can now try and stick in the slipstream of that Audi, and hopefully Roth will drag him all the way up to Kokums.
Yeah, drivers don't really care about us too much as commentators. They're not in their head going, oh, I wonder if John and Zach are enjoying this race. They're going, how am I able to get the most out of it? And a very Yeah, commendable sort of thing there from Salenger and Roth. Obviously not battling each other too much. Probably a luxury they could have had a bit earlier on in the race. As we see Mate Mikovic down the inside of the Le Mans chicane to get through on the fellow Lamborghini of Jourdan and up into second position. Now we see the gap between Mosin and Mikovic, 6.6, maybe 6.7 seconds, 6.8 by the time it settles down. That is the gap that Mikovic needs to go and catch. Of course, did get a little bit unlucky in the space that he overtook Jourdan there, being the Le Mans chicane. Obviously now a poor exit has extended that gap to 7.3 seconds once it settles down. Fabian Roth though, now of course Salenger, if I'm sort of looking at that and going, Fabian Roth, very quick driver as he falls through the face of the earth, very quick driver. He has had a couple of spins, he's now recovering, he's driven up onto the back of me, he's now overtaken me sort of with little to no struggle. Probably a driver I don't want to battle and instead utilise to try and elevate my own race. So I'll be interested to see if Salenger can stay with Roth and if the pair of them can now start chasing in on the Latvian of Kokums. Spiegel maybe could be quite a difficult ask just because of how close and competitive the two are in terms of raw pace. But yeah, if Salenger especially can sort of start giving a bit of a bump draft and elevating their pace further, I see no reason why they can't be on the back of Kokums, you know, in the next, say, hour stint, I guess.
Definitely possible. I'm going to come back to these two. I just want to point out as Fabian Roth locks up that car once again. The reason for my little exclamation a minute or two ago is because, unfortunately, CPEC is back in the pit lane and has been there for some time now. So a second pit stop, I'm thinking that's maybe been an accident or some form of damage rather than a drive-through, because CPEC has been in the pits now for a couple of minutes. Absolutely devastating for the driver who was up in a podium contention, top Porsche for a little while. And that honour now goes to Gjersen, the Swede, who's 56 seconds off the lead, and I do apologise if I'm butchering that pronunciation. Need a little bit of time and prep to get these pronunciations right, and that is something we did not have with this server and all the drivers jumping in. So we'll see how we are by the end of the race. But yes, Roth and Salenger, as you say, it's not just about the slipstream though, is it, Zach? It's not just about hanging onto the back of Roth and being towed along. It's also about learning, because Roth has clearly got the pace, arguably the fastest of the whole field. We know how experienced Fabian Roth is, and Salenger can not only get that slipstream to kind of be pulled along, but also watch Fabian Roth's lines, watch Fabian Roth's inputs. I'm not sure if it's best to copy Roth right now, given how many times Roth has come to grievance, or even nearly come to strife, as we saw a minute ago there with a lockup into turn one. So perhaps not best to copy too closely, but certainly a good learning experience here for Salenger.
Yeah, I mean, as a driver, it's sometimes a tough pill to swallow. In practice sessions, you'll go in, you'll do a few laps, and you go, oh, that felt like quite a good lap. I'm 7/10 off the pace. It must be the setup or something like that. I've always sort of had the mindset of trying to, before you start putting excuses, assume that you're the problem. Assume that there's something that you could do to elevate yourself a bit quicker. Yeah, maybe it's easy for Salenger to say, oh, maybe he's got a bit of a better setup, or yada yada yada, maybe his tyres are a bit fresher, but ultimately there is always something you as a driver can do to elevate your pace, and right now Salenger I think is doing that very, very well. Sometimes it could just be the case that you need that driver in front of you as a reference, something to go and chase, and maybe that's working wonders for Salenger, but sometimes you just need that route to say, oh, he's coming off the brakes a little bit sooner into that corner, maybe he's using a little bit more of the track or using a little bit more of the curb. Very, very minor things that of course drivers at this level will know to see, to normies, maybe I guess lower down like myself, maybe wouldn't see the minute differences in their driving, but Salenger and Roth probably will notice that, and Salenger will go, oh, hang on, maybe I can move my car just an inch, maybe a metre over to the right, use a little bit more of that track going into this sweeping left-hander, whatever it is, to help himself elevate, and yeah, hopefully it's going to be beneficial. Right now though, it seems that Fabian Roth is just, I think he's in that flow state of, I need to recover, I'm just going to drive as fast as I can. And it's really working for him. That gap is close to 6 seconds to the lead. Now he's only got 2.5 seconds to Kokums, the Latvian, in P2. I think he has reached flow state.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. Last 2 or 3 laps, it looks like Roth is just dialed in. And of course, with traffic, you can get held up by traffic as a GT3 car. There's no doubt. A Hypercar passing you in a difficult spot. However, it's not as influential on lap time for the GT3s as it is for the Hypercars. So it probably is just raw pace from Roth at the moment to get that gap down to 6.5 seconds. So we'll keep an eye on that one. Jourdan finally picks from P3 in the Lamborghini. I have to say, Zach, that was an incredibly long stint from the Lamborghini driver. I don't know how he managed to go about 4 laps further than everyone else, but it seemed like that was the case because he was still in the top 3 until this moment. So incredible stuff from Jourdan. Not quite sure how, but fair play.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, he had effectively lost a pit stop's worth of time relative to Mosen and Mikiewicz because he was overtaken before he came into the pit lane. So I think the offset has hurt him. But I think at this point, I think he's just doing it to say he can do it, to be honest. Just to sort of say, you know, I'm going to lift and coast, I'm going to see what happens, stretch it as long as I can. I have to say, very impressed with the fuel saving. Because again, at Daytona, the margin, it's quite slim. You are using quite a lot of fuel, and what you can save from fuel saving isn't monumental. It's not going to be a case that typically you can save, you know, 4 laps of fuel over a 40-minute stint. That's almost unheard of. So really, really good stuff from the French driver just to do it in of itself. Whether it's going to be beneficial for the race, I think remains to be seen. 4 laps over, you know, 2 or 3 stints, that's going to be 12 laps. He's only really buying himself half of a stint by the end of the race, which is not enough to offset the loss that he's getting from fuel saving.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll keep an eye on it. Hang on. Jourdan looks like he's out of this race now, Olivier Jourdan. That's devastating if that's the case, because we were just talking about the crazy offset, and that did not look good for the Frenchman. So, real shame.
It's a different kind of offset now for
yeah.
him.
It's I mean all that work and all that chat, and it's worth nothing in the end, Zach.
Well, brutality of motorsport, let's put it that way.
Look at Mikiewicz going, by the way, closing that gap now down to Mosen, down to 2.5 seconds. So that's been a big change. And as we said earlier, the 2 pit stops were very close in time. So I don't think this is a case of, you know, newer tires or anything like that. It's just pure pace from Mate. And you can just about see the Shell BMW up ahead there, and that gap is down to just over 2 seconds. So expect a battle for the lead in Hypercar before too long. We now go on board with Joran Bottinger, who's had a bit of an eventful race. He's been jumping up and down the leaderboard a couple of times in the Penske Porsche, and that is not for position, the Lamborghini behind. It's actually a big gap that Bottinger's got from P6 to P7. Organ donor down by around about a minute. So it's just a steady race at the moment for the German, but you know, holding his own in this race, 6th position, not bad effort at all, and only 10 seconds off the back of Reed. In fact, there's a pretty good battle. I would say 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th, they're all pretty close together, 25 seconds or so covering those 4. So that gives you something to race for, doesn't it, Zach? You know, as a driver in 6th position right now, the motivation is certainly, I'm only 25 seconds off the podium, and maybe I could do something about this, especially for Bottinger, who is basically fighting to be the top Porsche.
Yeah, 100%. We spoke about it at Macau, sort of those milestones that you set yourself as a driver. Obviously, the first one is everyone wants to go and win, right? That's inevitable. The next one, especially in sort of I call them exhibition races, because that kind of what it is, a special event where there's no sort of championship points or anything like that on offer. 2nd or 3rd, it's a podium. Is there really much difference between finishing P2 and P3? Maybe a little bit of pride, but ultimately it's a podium. Then it's like top 5, top 10, you know, that sort of thing. Those different sort of big chunk milestones. Right now, obviously, Bottinger very, very close to a P5 and getting that top 5 milestone. And like you say, in contention for that podium. Still with an hour and a half of this race to go. Still the majority of it left to run. And again, with strategy, mistakes, traffic, anything like that still to come in the race. You know, plenty of opportunity to come. I remember my first big event on RaceRoom was the Rocket Race Star Formula 4 Esports Competition UK. Try to say that time 5 times fast. The one that eventually gave Deegan Fairclough the driving British F4. He then went on to do a record-breaking season and now races in GB3 and has driven a Formula 1 car. The right man won it that day, let's put it that way. But I remember the first round at Silverstone, and we were fighting for 4th and 5th, got right to the end of the race, and the driver in P3, Kai Bikini, had made a mistake, or I think it was a disconnect or something or other, reached the incident limit and DNF'd. And right there and then, myself and Theo Mercurius, we were battling side by side through Magnus and Beckett's, not for just P4, but then suddenly a podium. And that's how quickly the flip can switch. And for Bottinger, it's just that mentality of trying to stay in all the way through the race. It's definitely a race of attrition, as Sipek is proving by staying in this. A huge long hold in the pit stop, an extra stop for the Czech driver, but now just made a space to gain a position inside the top 10.
Yeah, making his way past Sasha Andrich in the special edition liveried Porsche for P9. So Andrich still lapping, still in the top 10, still circulating. Bukowski back in the pits in P11, dropping further back down the field. That gap, by the way, Zach, I've been keeping an eye on it. Mikiewicz got it down to under 1 second briefly in the Lamborghini. So I think maybe not this lap, but the next lap, we're going to see a slipstream for Mikiewicz. And I wouldn't be surprised if he dispatches fairly quickly, or at least attempts to dispatch fairly quickly Alex Mosen, and just try and use that pace to the advantage. I don't think, you know, we talked earlier about how you want to stay in the slipstream, you want to try and save fuel and do all that. That's when you're really, really closely matched in pace with someone. If you have the pace to break away, which obviously Spiegel does not have in GT3s, or didn't have anyway until Roth had the spin, because of that speed difference, I think we're going to see Mikiewicz try and get the move done and pull away, because you never know what's going to happen later on. You don't know what strategy your rivals are on, and there's always lap traffic, there's always variables. So let's see what happens here. Are you the same as me? Do you think Mate is going to try and make the move, or do you think he's going to just be a little bit more chill?
I think if he'd have sort of chipped at this gap, you know, a tenth or two over the course of a stint, I probably would say maybe he'd sit behind. But I think as a driver, you're going to weigh this up, and Mate Mikiewicz is going in his head. There's the race lead. I have absolutely destroyed this gap. I'm going through and I'm running away. The question remains, though, once he gets through, is that pace and that momentum still going to happen? Because right now, if he takes a lap or two to get through on Mosen, that momentum is going to stall a little bit. It's going to then take him a lap or two to get through. We don't know how Mosen is going to react in the slipstream. Can he stay with Mikiewicz? Is he going to put up a bit of a battle? You know, so many things can still happen. I think for Mate, he's going to try and get through as quickly and as risk-free as he possibly can. Really go for a high percentage yield move, if you like, and minimise that risk. And then just assess the situation. If he completely drives away, then that's different. If Mosen eventually stays with him, maybe they'll then sort of consolidate and start to save fuel. Mate will, if he's in front, maybe will lift and coast a little bit, control that pace. If he then eventually ends up behind, he'll lift and coast and try and stay through. But I think the run through the Le Mans chicane there from Mate Mikiewicz is as telling as you need. 3.5 tenths is the gap. Surely the Hungarian is going for the move towards turn 1.
Let's wait and see. The speed difference is huge though, Zach, and I think it's going to be inevitable that Mate is going to go for this. Are we going to see a big defense from Alex at this occasion? Mate dives to the inside very, very late. He's going to get alongside the BMW and pull into the lead of this race. So straight away, Mate Mikiewicz tries to maintain the momentum, it has to be said, in that Lamborghini. Alex can do nothing on the outside line. He's going to try a little bit of a switchback, but it's not going to be enough. And there is the lead change. The Lamborghini retakes the lead from the start of this race. Our pole sitter is back out in front, and Alex Mosen is going to have to try hard now to stick in that slipstream. And try, he certainly will.
Yeah, of course. I mean, he's gonna give it a go. But look at that, through 2 corners alone, and Mikiewicz has gained 6 tenths of a second. Going to be very difficult for Mosen to stay with that. I would, again, I've not spoken to drivers. I've not tested it. I don't know. I would say slipstream is probably in the range of about 7 or 8 tenths. I'd say it's probably a conservative sort of range to sort of say. Right now, Mosen is just about hanging on to that bit of traffic to contend with as they negotiate their way onto the oval. I don't think it's going to be hugely consequential. We also saw a slight mistake from Mosen through the Western Horseshoe, again allowing Mikiewicz to open up. 0.8 of a second now is the gap between the Hungarian and the German. So yeah, I think we were right in terms of the prediction that Mikiewicz is going to get in front and he's going to start to run away.
Yeah, you said it already, that the slight missed apex there into West Horseshoe was just enough to drop Mosen a couple of tenths back, and that was the biggest difference there in terms of slipstream and momentum. We do have a couple of cars in traffic, but I thought there were GT3s up in front. It was actually hypercars, which I think's helped Mikiewicz in this situation. Now, of course, that will still affect Mate Mikiewicz having to pass hypercars when he does catch up to them, but the run he's had through the Le Mans chicane there to pull another half a second on Mosen, who may have been caught up with some of those GT3s, that's just sealed the deal, really. And Mosen, unfortunately, couldn't hang on for even a single lap. And that's nothing to do with Mosen's lack of speed or lack of talent. It's Mikiewicz absolutely getting the hammer down. And yeah, poof, and the opportunity's gone. So lead change, Hungarian into the lead, 35 laps into the race. We are keeping an eye on this run in GT3 as well, because Roth has continued to close in on Kokens. He did actually have the gap down to Spiegel around about 4 seconds, or even 3.5 earlier on. So it's gone back up to 4.5, but overall the general trend is coming down as we see Kokums pull into the pit lane, get slowed down just before the line. Beautiful stuff. And that is our second place Audi into the pits. Let's see where he comes out of the pit lane, because we already saw Salinger in the pits in our 4th place Audi. So it's going to be close between Kokums and Salinger. Salinger, of course, who was following Roth up to the back of this purple Audi. So let's see what happens when these drivers come out of the pit lane. It is an excruciating pit lane exit these days, it has to be said, Zach, because unlike back in the day, the pit lane exit line for when you can get off the speed limiter is really, really late. You go around the whole first corner to try and stop people crashing into the concrete wall. I understand it on cold tires, but it's not until you get very, very close to turn 3, actually, into International Horseshoe, that you can really get the power down. And it is excruciating as a driver watching those gaps go up or indeed come down.
It really is, and as well on the exit you have that speed differential, because the pit limit line is the racing line. The pit exit line is the racing line, where you've got that sort of slip road back onto the circuit. Drivers are pretty much immediately, as soon as they're able to, as soon as that concrete wall ends, they're darting to the left to open it up. I think it was Kevin Estra's Porsche in the real life Daytona that had a bit of contact because of that exact thing. A GT was coming out of the pit lane as the Porsche was coming to the left to open up the International Horseshoe. You can have a bit of contact, so it is a painful one, but a very good one. I'll be honest, in terms of cold tyres, and that concrete wall is contact between Fabian Roth straight into the back end of one of the back markers there, and that, a desperate lunge from a very desperate driver to get back into contention of this race. A mistake, potentially a misjudgment from the German, and all of that hard work, 4 seconds he'd been able to get the gap to. He'd gained about 3 over the course of the last 20 minutes or so. That's been thrown away and added to now. I mean, it's going to be, he's rolling this ball uphill, isn't he? I mean, Fabian Roth, he is just making this as hard of a battle for himself as he possibly can.
Yeah, it's a really tricky one to judge without seeing the onboard replay, because I don't know if it was a miscommunication there between Roth and I believe it was Razumov in the Porsche. It is, of course, the responsibility of the car behind to make that move safely, and Roth could have afforded to lose a second there, and it would have been fine. He's literally just spent an hour trying to come back into the race, and in one fell swoop he's just gone. You know, he's straight away lost that gap double again, because the pace is so similar between Spiegel and Roth, and that is the sort of mistake that will cost him this race. The reason I'm saying we haven't seen it again, was there a little bit of unpredictability from the back marker that caught Roth out? It's hard to know, only seeing it once, unfortunately. But either way, there was clearly, you know, Roth was on a charge. He was on a mission, trying to close that gap down to Spiegel, and whatever's happened there, he's ended up in the back of a Porsche and facing the wrong direction. That was hugely costly. Into the pits comes Roth, so we'll see what happens as he comes out of the pits. I should point out that Kokums has come out around about 35 seconds off the back of Salinger, so I do wonder if maybe that was a tyre change for Kokums and no tyre change for Salinger. So we'll keep an eye on that one as well. Roth he's lost about 10 seconds in that instant, Zach, at the minimum. So as he pulls out the pits now, you can see that Roth's gone for the Salinger strategy potentially, and should be around about 10 seconds behind his fellow German. So it's, hugely costly.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's going to be feeling the pain of this one for quite some time, I would imagine. What I am interested in is the range that we've got in the GT3s with the pit stops. Obviously, we've got Spiegel and the likes of Moreira's style going quite long. Obviously, Roth, I think, after the incident, probably just said, I'm going to cut my losses and come in on this lap anyway. Philip Spiegel comes in on this lap, gets it slowed down for the pit limit line quite nicely, and will make his way down to his pit box. Now, the interesting thing will be what the gap is between Kokums, who, of course, has come up behind Salinger. So very good stuff from the Audi, of course, to get that jump. Whether or not Salinger maybe has taken the shorter stop now and put in what would be like half a stint worth of fuel to have a very quick middle portion of the race, I think maybe that's what we're starting to see, and we'll have to wait and see how that develops over the course of the next hour and 23 minutes, right? But Spiegel and Moreiras both coming in on this lap, and again, this is going to be the big challenge for Spiegel. He's got the pace, he's got the consistency, while everyone else sort of is crumbling to the pressure around him ever so slightly. Now he really needs to nail this, because I think if Kokums, especially towards the back end of the Latvian stint, was looking very, very quick and actually closing in that gap rather than just trying to hang on to maintaining it, he was actually starting to close it. So I think for Spiegel, there is definitely an element of pressure here. He can't get complacent. The race still very much is wide open for the leading GT3s.
You're absolutely right. Spiegel cannot get complacent because of how hot the pace is. But at the same time, there's nothing to suggest that Spiegel will get complacent based on what we've seen so far. It's just been super consistent. And maybe that consistency, maybe it looks better than it is. We don't really know, because of the mistakes we've seen from the drivers around Spiegel. So the fact that, you know, we haven't seen any mistakes and the gap seems fairly consistent other than when these mistakes happen, just proves, I think, how good a job that Spiegel is doing at this current stage. Speaking of good job, Andrea Respini in the BMW, who was running on the outskirts of the top 10 earlier on, is up to P2, yet to make the pit stop, of course, so this is just a temporary podium position for Respini in the number 1 BMW, but let's give Andrea credit while he's on screen here, doing a stellar job in that beautiful car, up in P2, 1.7 seconds off the lead at the moment of Moravcic in another BMW. So the two BMWs, nice to see them at the top of the leaderboard for a brief period of time, it has to be said, most likely. We've also got Elastchuk in the pit lane, the Canadian in the BMW representing the hypercar class, was up in the top 6 briefly through the pit stops, but of course now coming back on strategy. So we'll see where the driver comes out of the pits on this occasion. But yeah, that 2-second gap between the two BMWs, you can see them on screen now. That's your lead 2 in GT3, and it's only 7.4 seconds back to Spiegel. There you can see on the screen as well how many pit stops these drivers have made. So it's 1 stop so far, and there will of course need to be another stop for these drivers with 1 hour and 21 minutes to go. I do not think you can get to the end on 1 hour and 21 minutes. So fascinating to see how that plays out a little bit later on as we go on board now with Lucas in the Audi, and you can see there, Spiegel only, what's that, 1.5, 2 seconds? That was terrible maths. 2.2 seconds off the back of our Porsche, and looking just really strong, and actually surprising me, I think, with the pace right now and how close he actually is able to be to Spiegel. And that strategy of letting Roth go earlier has certainly paid dividends.
Yeah, it really is. Salenga, of course. I want to know what happened to Kokums then, because did the Latvian take tyres, or has everyone else just done the shortest stint now? I genuinely wouldn't know. Here comes Moravik coming into the pit lane at the BMW for their first service of the race. 1 hour and 20 left to go in this one. Respini will, of course, inherit the race lead and will savour this moment in the sun. Of course, a race leader in a RaceRoom special event. Soak it in before you have to obviously relinquish that when you come back into the pit lane. But yeah, for Spiegel, Salenga's pace is, I would be concerned, because I have to say Salenga's been a bit of a dark horse. We've spoken about Spiegel, we've spoken about Kokums. Roth, of course, has been a very big name in this race for both the right and the wrong reasons so far in what has been just over an hour of driving. But, Salenga has just been there or thereabouts, and it's often those dark horses that you overlook that come to sort of bite you in the backside a bit later on. So with 2 seconds gap, we'll have to monitor that over the next couple of laps and see if Salenga can close in on his countrymen. It's
been very easy to focus on the two pace setters, let's say, Spiegel and Roth. That's kind of been the storyline since qualifying, but it's certainly not the only two in the mix here with Kokums and Salenga, and obviously potentially different strategies happening at the same time as we now see Richard Marachik back in the pits. Is that again, or is that just the first stop ending? I think that's just, they're just leaving the pits, having had the brief moment in the sun leading the race, and Respini will, I'm sure, be in shortly, because we are now well over the 1 hour mark in this race, over an hour gone. Lewis Gilbert in the Traxion chat is asking, who is that in P14 in GT3? Now, P13 now, it is not Max Verstappen. Let me just point out, it is Monty Verstappen in the BMW, who unfortunately came to grief earlier on in the race and found themselves in for a long pit stop, but is keeping on going back up to P13. We haven't seen him much on the stream, but no, Max Verstappen has not taken up German nationality. That is in fact Monty Verstappen. So there you go. And there's he on screen
Monty
now.
Verstappen.
And a lot of damage on the front of that BMW. It's a great looking livery, it has to be said, but not so good looking bonnet, or hood if you're watching from America.
That's a bonnet, come on. Come on, it's a bonnet. We can debate over the bus stop and the Le Mans chicane, but it's a bonnet. Yeah, if the BMW front end needed to be any more large, he's somehow managed to do that. Yeah, here is the legendary Monty Verstappen out there on circuit, 2 laps down from the leader. Of course, maybe some of those laps have contributed to that crumpled in front bumper, or that remains to be known. But yeah, I mean, it's good to see, and nice to always see the confusion when we do see Monty Verstappen take to some of these races. And I'm sure I don't know, do you reckon he's frustrated by it? Do you reckon he loves it, or does he sort of hate being... I guess if you wouldn't hate being thought to be Max Verstappen, would you?
No, I think it gives you a little bit of extra attention on the stream, and maybe it sets your expectation up too high, unfortunately, for Monty. I mean, this race has not gone well for him, but I'm sure he's gained a few extra fans. If you're representing the M Verstappen brand in any sort of racing, I think it's probably a positive thing. So yeah, it depends on Monty's personality, and I'll be honest, I don't know Monty personally at all, so I'm sure we can ask him afterwards whether it has a positive or a negative impact representing the M Verstappen name. But it is funny to see no Franz Hermann in this split. That's we've also seen. I don't know if you saw this, Zach, but Kimi Antonelli's been having a lot of fun racing at Daytona Milton Keynes in go-karts under I can't remember what the name is that he's racing
Ollie
under.
Behrman as well.
It's a bit late now to reveal it, or you have to go for a different name now if he's going to go back there. But clearly, having a lot of fun racing against everyone over at Daytona.
Yeah, Kimi Antonelli was out at in the south of Italy quite recently as well. I say near Bari, about 2 hours away from the city of Bari, in a karting track called La Conca, testing in WSK. So the series and the karting series, a lot of drivers have come through. The Arvid Lindblads, obviously Antonelli, Max Verstappen, people like Callum Ilott have come through, Maya Berg, basically whoever's decent somewhere at racing has come through WSK. He was there doing some pre-season testing in a KZ2, one of the shifter cars, Kimi Antonelli. So he's been quite prominent, and it has been quite interesting to see how prominent racing drivers have been over the winter in some series or another. I know towards the tail end of 2025, Marcus Armstrong was doing some races in shifter karts as well to some moderate success. Yeah, just obviously trying to keep fresh over the winter. Of course, I've been seeing a lot of F1 drivers. I saw Arvid Lindblad in a public race yesterday, doing some F3 round Barcelona. So nice that he's keeping busy while very busy this week.
Yeah, absolutely. I do want to talk about that a little bit, but I'm just going to flag, we are watching Lucas Salinger in P2 in the Audi, and it is down to 8/10 now between Spiegel and Salinger. So we will keep an eye on that. 8/10 is almost enough for the Audi driver to get a slipstream. So fascinating stuff. Roth 13.4 back, so certainly not over for the second of our Germans in the Audi. But yeah, I think, just to your point there about F1 drivers, doing a bit of sim racing in the off season and all that, I think it's also a reflection on the generation that we've got coming through at the moment, because we're now seeing drivers come through, in their late teens and early 20s who have actually grown up with sim racing. And that wasn't the case, back when we were first involved in sim racing, and there was a transition really between, sim racing was first becoming realistic enough to be actually a pretty accurate training tool just when I was kind of growing up. So I kind of started on sim racing, was able to go into real life stuff. We talked a lot in the last broadcast about drivers doing similar stuff, and obviously talked about Deegan Fairclough earlier on. But we are now seeing, any young aspirational Formula One driver growing up now will be on the sim. They will be playing games like RaceRoom, and I'm sure other simulations as well, just getting as much seat time as possible outside of the real car, as well as the karting. It's an accessible route in at any age, and why wouldn't you? If you're looking to become the next Lewis Hamilton or Max Verstappen, the more time you can spend learning about car control, getting seat time, getting race practice, whether that's racecraft, defending, overtaking, setup work, you can do it all from the comfort of your home, and relatively affordable. You're not paying for tires and fuel and crash damage and track hire. So nowadays it is so normal for young drivers to come through to be essentially pro sim racers.
Yeah, I mean, I've been doing a little bit more sim racing recently. I've been loving it. I'm addicted. I finish uni, I go straight to my sim, and I'm there for the rest of the day. I've been really enjoying it. I've seen a lot of familiar faces in sort of the people that I commentate in karting. I do a lot of karting commentary, WSK, the Rotax Euro Trophy, that sort of thing. Seeing a lot of familiar faces, so sort of 14 to 16-year-olds, the likes of Zach Drummond, who's from Scotland, so I'm sure you'll be very fond. The likes of Tino Sidler, who again is a very high-level driver in what he does. And I have to say that I'm very impressed with both, like, how good they are at doing it as well. That's the other thing, is that they're not just jumping on and dawdling about. They are very, very competitive. I mean, Deegan Fairclough in sports cars has got like a 7.7k rating. He's unbelievable. It's crazy how transferable these skills are from real life into the sim, and how well they complement each other. So yeah, really, really good to see. And you're right, it's just something to keep fresh, keeping those inputs fresh, so that when you jump back into the real thing, you're not as rusty. You are able to just jump back in and be at home, really. And also, very selfishly, from a commentary perspective, doing that sim racing yourself and then meeting these drivers in these races, maybe having a little bit of a tussle with them, it gives you an opportunity to learn more about them, to have those conversations with them, to be a little bit more relatable and have those relationships with the drivers. So from a commentary perspective, it's quite nice to get info for broadcasts, if I must say, if you're being a little bit more sleuthy. Nonetheless, in terms of that gap, which I have been keeping an eye on, Spiegel has been able to reopen it to back over a second. I think maybe a bit of traffic has influenced that, but yeah, Spiegel, I think, is assessing the threat and seeing that it is firmly there.
One mistake, though, from Spiegel at this point, and the slipstream's there. And as we've talked about so many times, the slipstream is crucial around here. I mean, you can see just how much traffic can come into play here, though, as both Creed and Alastuke are held up behind the blue Ferrari, which I do believe is, well, it's either Cornelli or Moraitis in P4. And I think it may well be the driver in P4, because that blue Ferrari has been looking a little bit beaten up. But we see Creed going to the outside of Reed in the Lamborghini and the BMW, respectively. So it's Creed versus Reed. In fact, no, I'm talking nonsense, isn't it? It's Creed versus Elastiuk. There's a few timing tower issues that are just flipping between the two at the moment. And it's probably, actually, do you know what? It's a me issue, because I think it was because Creed was actually ahead of Elastiuk there very briefly. So ignore what I'm saying. But it looks like for the moment, he's going to slot back in behind the BMW and remain in P8 is Tom Creed, but he does still have the slipstream. You can see the speed rising at the bottom of the screen now as the Lambo looks to the outside as we head through the tri-oval towards the opening corner. Big trail braking zone. Creed's going to go for the up and under, is he? Going to go to the outside. Close to contact there between the two of them, but they both get through neatly at the end of it all, and they will both live to fight another day. But it definitely looks like Tom Creed is looking to make a move, potentially has the pace here over Elastiuk in the BMW, and we'll see what happens next time the slipstream comes into effect when they get back onto the banking. Meanwhile, by the way, just an 8/10 gap between the lead 2 and GT3, so we will still keep an eye on that too.
Yeah, exactly. About 0.7 of a second as we've got side-by-side here between Matusiak and Respini, who are previous race leader. Nice move around the outside from the BWT liveried Mercedes. Very nicely done from Mikhail Matusiak there to keep 11th place. I mean, it's not for a win or anything. Nicely done. Yeah, brilliant move. To be fair, there's also the Porsche closing back in as well, just behind that. I think that could be potentially, yeah, it could be Kokum's coming through. I'm not entirely sure. Anyway, here comes Respini back on the counter attack, straight to the outside, using the grunt of that BMW to find a way through and straight through back into what is P11 and a nice little tussle for position here. Also at the front, Spiegel versus Salenga, 3/4 of a second between the pair of them. Virtually nothing separating them at all, in perfect slipstream range as it's a very busy turn one there. You've got GT3s and prototypes all trying to jostle their way through, and Respini trying to deal with letting the prototypes through, because as much as you want to be predictable and stay on the race line, as Respini is that too late on the brakes, it is indeed, goes straight off at the International Horseshoe and has to recover. As much as you want to be predictable, you also don't want to get crashed into. So if you're on the right-hand side going into the International Horseshoe, it's almost a case of you almost do kind of want to stay off the race line, because I guess that's what the GTP expects.
Yeah, I think predictability is the main thing. So I think if you've got a car, you know, looking, let's say the body language of the car is suggesting they're going for it, I think, yeah, you're right, let's play it safe, but not that safe for Respini. Just misjudging it potentially there, running a little bit too wide. But I mean, I had my teeth clenched there as the hypercars were coming through. There was so many in the mirror, ducking and diving. There was also 3 GT3s that were tossing for position. So it was very tense for a little while there, but it looks like most of the cars made it through unscathed. Definitely amongst them was our leader as well, Mikovits in the black and gold Lamborghini. Kind of last to come through. Looked probably the most calm and controlled of them all, which maybe shouldn't come as a surprise. The experienced Hungarian out in front, who I should point out as well, did finish on the podium last time out at Macau. So in the last special event, top split race, Mikovits was on the podium. Looks like could be taking a win this time around, of course, in slightly strange circumstances compared to usual, let's say. The gap now coming down between Mikovits and Mosen. I don't know if that's a timing issue, but it's down from 5 seconds to 0, so we'll keep an eye on that one. Meanwhile, you can see the battle for the leading GT3 is really hotting up now, as Salenga all over the back of Spiegel as they now head towards turn 1. Will he go for a move this time around? Let's see, as it's a pit stop for Mikovits, that's why.
Yeah, it is indeed. So Mikovits comes into the pit lane, and, well, there is the gap for the lead. Lucas Salenga has driven this in absolutely brilliantly. Bit of a bump draft for the moment as they negotiate their way onto the tri-oval and towards turn number 1. Spiegel, of course, on the left, not trying to give any space, any more space than he needs to, through the tri-oval, up over the banking and towards turn number 1. The inside, almost thinking about it from the Audi R8 there, almost opens up as well, but they're being lapped by one of the Porsche prototypes. So for now, Salenga has to sit and play in second, not taking the opening opportunity that he was given, and I don't blame him. I don't think he should be in a rush.
There's some flashing lights between the two of them as well. Spiegel first, then Salenga, and it's interesting as I thought Spiegel was losing the rear there, but I don't think he actually was. It's all good. One little incident between these two, Zach. I know that Salenga's going to take it easy and clearly not going to just send one down the inside for no reason, but one little mistake here, one little misjudgment, very easy to go in a little bit deep on the brakes or just not quite get the car slowed down as efficiently. and we could see some spins, and Roth, you know, only 12.5 seconds back with all that pace. So it's certainly not over for Roth in P3, and I'm sure Roth will be happy about the fact that the front two are battling for position. But for now, Salenga's going to play it sensibly, follow Spiegel, and see what happens. I'm not sure what the light flashing was for there, whether it was an apology or a thank you or a let's work together. I mean, the problem with racing drivers is you've got one way of communicating while out on circuit, and that's with your lights. But a flash of the lights could literally mean anything.
Yeah, for me, if it's to a prototype, it's I'm very angry at you.
Yeah.
If it's to someone in my class, it's let's work together. Very similar in karting to those that watch karting or follow karting or have done it. You tap your side of the helmet and you point forward. It's a case of I'm not going to overtake you, I'm trying to go through. That being said, I have also sometimes used it as a distraction tool. Yeah, you're right. It's a means of communication that can mean 100 different things, but largely my interpretation is let's work together, especially if you couple the flashing lights with a bump draft. That's sort of, I think it's context. It's very informed context. Nonetheless, let's see what the intention here is from Salenga as they negotiate their way once again through the tri-oval with just over an hour left to go. Inside or outside, which one is the Audi going to go? It's going to opt to go to the outside through turn number one. Later, ever so slightly on the brakes from the Porsche, so Salenga able to go for the outside line, get that drive underneath, and they are going to draw side by side because Spiegel a little bit shaky on the exit up over the curb, and a change for the lead because Lucas Salenga very briefly finds his way through side by side towards the international horseshoe though.
Yeah, plenty of respect between the two through the little chicane there at turn 2 to essentially run side by side, but it is recovery from Spiegel, who remains in the lead in the Porsche. Good stuff. And yeah, you're absolutely right about the flashing. It's all about the context, but I've had situations where someone's thought I was angry and I was actually just saying great move. So I think let's devise a universal language for light flashing. 3 flashes means I'm annoyed. 2 means, you know, on you go. Well, let's think about that another time. Meanwhile, Creed, very, very close to contact at the back of Elastic. So this battle continues between the 2 hypercar drivers, battling over P7 and P8. We've got a number of hypercars in the pits as well for what should be their second scheduled stop. So we've got the Porsche of Gjersen, we've got Bottinger back in the pits again, and we've also got Organ Donor in the pits. So 3 cars in the pits, and it looks like a very, very close battle for P2 and P3 at the moment. Again, it could, they're perfectly in sync, so I do wonder if it's timing tower. We'll just keep an eye on that one. But Mikovic's back into the lead then once the pit stops cycle through.
Yeah, absolutely. So Mikovic's from Mosin, the gap 4 seconds. Now, Mikovic's, I don't know what happened, because for a big portion of the opening stint of this race, the gap stayed the same to Mosin. Like, it wasn't a drastic close like we saw when the lead actually did change. Let's see if the lead is going to change in GT3s though. Once again, Lucas Salenga with an opportunity to maybe go for a bit of a move towards turn number 1. Of course, Spiegel hugging that yellow line for his absolute life, trying to hang on to the lead, trying to dart to the inside and see if the space is going to open up from Lucas Salenga. Once again, has to go to the outside. Once again, the Porsche probably going to learn from its mistake and try and keep it a little bit tidier to the apex of the opening corner. Much better this time through, and not going to open the door for Lucas Salenga to even have a sniff at the race lead.
Yeah, just going to bide his time. I think, would you say this is Lucas Salenga essentially saying to Spiegel, I'm worried about Roth. Like, let's get the top 2 secured. Let's try and also cover some strategy, because of course someone could decide not to take tires, someone else might take them. Do you think this is Salenga saying, hey, let's make this a 2-horse race, not a 3-horse race?
But I wouldn't blame him. He's got the pace to stay with Spiegel. The only caveat to that, I would say, is that sometimes as a driver you can sort of go, this driver is quite quick. I do kind of want to take an opportunity to get through while I can, because it's almost the case that, as the gap towards the front end of the LMDHs is closed, Mikovic versus Mosin about 2.5 seconds. I think maybe Mikovic getting caught up with a little bit of intra-class traffic there. But I've had it before where I'm racing a driver that's clearly much faster than me, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, we're a similar pace, and I'm like, oh, hang on, what's going on here? I don't trust it. I want to get through and get away while I can before you remember how to drive again and then get through on me. Maybe there could be an element of that from Salenga. I don't think at the moment that is the case. I think you're right. It is the sense that they're minimizing those variables, focusing on strategy, staying with each other. And by the end of the race, you're right, that run to the line, which inevitably I think we're going to have in GT3s, you don't want 4 cars nose to tail through the Le Mans chicane. We do as commentators, of course. As a driver, you don't. And I think Salenga and Spiegel both understand that they want it to be as headache-free as they possibly can heading into the final hour of this race.
Absolutely, and you don't necessarily want to be leading out of the Le Mans chicane either. That's something to bear in mind. But I mean, we've got an hour to think about that and to plan the positioning of the cars. It is fascinating from a strategic point of view. And I think, you know, there's no evidence to suggest that Salenga would drive away from Spiegel were to get past. We've seen evidence from Salenga that he's actually got more pace than we maybe thought at the start of the race because he caught Spiegel without the slipstream. So let's remember that. That doesn't mean that you have enough of a pace advantage to not clear the other car, because if he was to get past Spiegel and give Spiegel the slipstream, not only, as you alluded to, would Spiegel maybe find pace again that Spiegel might have lost, arguably, just see a little bit of rhythm. It could also mean that, you know, Spiegel gets pulled along. So there's not necessarily a benefit to going past. What the benefit to being behind is fuel saving. That is the key here. So Lucas, yes, he's doing bump drafting. That might not tell me that he's fuel saving much, but I see that gap to Roth, and I think Lucas is sensible, honestly, to just push Spiegel along and be in this position. This is the perfect position to be in 5 minutes to go in this race. So why not do everything you can to just extend that and keep it going? So fascinating. We'll see how it plays out. Or maybe he'll feel like he wants to get the move done early, so he gives himself a window of strategy. But I think he's going to be quite happy to sit here in P2, unless we see a big mistake from Spiegel. So that's something to bear in mind. We did see Mikovits come through this field as well, just a couple of corners ago, 2 seconds now between most. And we seem to have a bit of an issue with Damien Reed in the 3rd place BMW. Not an issue in terms of being on circuit, but just a little issue with the timing tower. It seems like the times are connected between 2nd and 3rd. So what that does mean is we can't really tell where P3 is at. So we will just keep an eye on that one. But the gaps are all very, very small at the moment in Hypercar. They are changing quite quickly. As we now see, we go back to the lead. I thought there was a crazy battle on, and then I remembered straight away it is just our front 2, of course, still separated by less than a 1/10 of a second. So yeah, I'm very intrigued to see how this plays out, and I love it. I have to say, I have so much enjoyment, Zach, when I watch 2 drivers around Daytona driving together. Even if I don't think they're going to make a move, just seeing 2 cars in tandem running that closely is exciting for me.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's always good to see, because you can almost put yourself into the cockpit and sort of feel what they're feeling. You know, the car in front really trying to push, car behind as well really trying to stay on the back of the one in front. And you know, it's exhilarating, and it's such a high level that we've got between Spiegel and Salenga. What is interesting as Tom Creed comes into the pit lane is Spiegel's tendency to defend into the Le Mans chicane. I don't think he fully trusts Salenga. I mean, the last couple of runs through turn number 1, I've not really seen much to suggest, like you say, there's not much evidence that Salenga can pull away. There's not too much evidence that he's being overly aggressive. He's not trying to get the car around the outside or trying to aggressively set up a switchback, and yet still Spiegel defends the Le Mans chicane pretty much every single lap that we've seen them go through. The gap has extended a little bit on this attempt, so I don't think he will necessarily need to. But it's not like Spiegel is fully trusting Salenga and just going, yeah, I'm going to chill on the racing line. Oh my goodness me, that got a little bit dicey there for Salenga, having to negotiate some lap traffic as they work through the Le Mans chicane. But yeah, Spiegel, he's not 100% on board with this plan.
It's a really good point. Why is Spiegel defending there? Because not only is he defending a corner where Salenga's, everything about Salenga's body language is saying, I'm not going for the move. It's also not really a good overtaking spot. You know, why would he go for a move into that chicane when clearly, as you can see with the pace difference, he could get it done heading into turn 1. I mean, and very clearly choosing not to. So I'm with you on that one. I don't quite understand why there's a defensive line going on. But hey, I guess we will find out later on, or we'll have to speak to him and ask. Spiegel just looks not flustered, but looks like he's on the limit of that Porsche at the moment. I think Salenga's comfortable in the Audi, just following in behind. A little bit of a lock-up there from Spiegel as he goes deep into International Horseshoe. But again, nothing really much in it through the traffic. There's still no real gap there, so I don't see anything changing in the short term. Let's see what Spiegel does, though, in the next lap. Will he go defensive again into the Le Mans chicane? Because these two are very, very close. In fact, is Spiegel a bit deep on the brakes? Oh, there's a bit of a lock-up there. You saw the smoke coming. Probably an inside-right lock-up from Spiegel in the Porsche, but managed to get it stopped and get it rotated through West Horseshoe. But just a sign of how hard Spiegel is actually pushing right now.
Yeah, I think he has to be on the limit of that Porsche. It's not overly great in terms of straight line speed. Definitely not versus the Audi, but it is really good through the twisty stuff. So Spiegel having to be on the limit where his car is strong, where he is strong, to sort of minimize that damage. But Salenga, just in his body language, I can probably imagine he is quite chill, maybe a little bit more relaxed into the Le Mans chicane. Look at that run, and again, a bump draft, a clear indication to say, mate, I don't want to go for the move. Why are you defending the Le Mans chicane? You're just slowing us down. Thankfully, to Salenga, they're not actually being slowed down too much. They are still extending the gap on Fabian Roth behind. If it did get to the case that Roth started chipping away a gap, that I think would be the nail in the coffin for Salenga to say, you know what? Actually, I am going to kind of go for it because I'm losing too much time here. I am actually now inhibiting myself rather than going through and being aggressive, because it is frustrating as a driver behind wanting to work together with the car in front, and they just don't get the memo. Of course, they're probably not too far away from coming into the pits, the pair of them. So maybe that's what Salenga's waiting for. He's going to get this done in the pit stop, save a little bit more fuel, shorter stop, yada yada yada. You sort of catch the drift there, but he's nothing about his body language is being aggressive, and yet Spiegel is just sort of looking in his mirrors, driving in his mirrors, I think, a lot, maybe explaining why he's on the limit a little bit as well, because he's so focused on what's behind him, not quite able to focus too much on what's in front of him. And again, we saw there a slight little bit of tyre smoke from the front right into the international horseshoe. Yeah,
to be fair to Spiegel, he didn't go defensive that time into the launch game, but what he did do was get it a little bit crossed up on the way in, and I saw a bit of tyre smoke, I saw a bit of a rear step out of that Porsche, and of course the Porsche is the most rearward weighted car of them all, so I was a little bit concerned there. I maybe let out a little yelp, but thankfully the two of them got through okay, and that gap, again, as we say, to Roth is pretty much staying the same. So yeah, they're going to continue doing that, and bump drafting is an interesting one. It's something I actually personally love. I love to see bump drafting because it's a tactical element of racing for me. This isn't real life. You're not going to get hurt on the sim. I don't see a disadvantage to allowing things like that. Maybe it's different if it's a team sport and someone with teammates when no one else's teammates is bump drafting to gain a huge speed. That's different. But seeing genuine racing where someone is just using physics to their advantage, I do personally love to see it. Interesting to hear viewers' thoughts at home. If you're watching this, do you agree with bump drafting? Do you think it should be allowed in sim racing and racing? It's a bit mixed in real racing, isn't it? I think that the first big example I remember of let's say arguably dangerous and inappropriate bump drafting was Antonio Felix da Costa back in the GP3 days. I think it was Monza, where he was pushing along someone down the main straight, and it was pretty incredible to watch. It lifted the rear wheels up, didn't it? Basically, or no, it lifted Costa's front wheels up, and he couldn't actually steer. He was just locked in, and it was pretty incredible to watch.
And now he races in Formula E, where he gets quite a lot of that similar dynamic. I love Formula E.
It's touring car racing, really, isn't it? It's touring car racing without doors.
It's open wheel, yeah, absolutely. I think he also had contact with Cassidy in practice, if memory serves me correctly as well. I think they were having a little bit of a discussion about that. Nick Cassidy, of course, fielding a new drag reduction system haircut this weekend at Miami at the E3. I do love Formula E. I think it's absolutely quality. But yeah, Da Costa definitely adopting the driving style required to be at the front end of Formula E quite early in his career. I like bump drafting. I think I'm very scared to do it. Oftentimes what I'll do is I'll lift off and just be slightly to the rear end, so much so that you still get kind of the effect of bump drafting without the bump. It's almost like the air going over the top of the car hits the front of your car and sort of goes into the back of theirs. It works in a very similar way, not quite as much as bump drafting does, but you do kind of still get a similar effect. Because the thing for me is that maybe this is a me problem. I just don't trust the car in front not to spin themselves out on my nose, because a lot of people are very left and right on a straight over bumps, and all it takes is it to connect in a weird way, and you get that angle, you move, and then the car's spun, especially at Daytona where the car is under quite a lot of strain, and you're not actually going in a straight line, you're following a curve. So if you bump draft and you're using that, it just becomes so much more difficult to make bump drafting work effectively. So fair play for getting it done well. However, Salenga, I think, getting caught up with a bit of prototype traffic there, because has dropped off the back of Spiegel with 54 minutes to go. And
we think Salenga's got the pace to catch back up, but losing the slipstream could cause that not to be the case. I think it will happen. But let's wait and see. We saw a very close call there between the back markers. I'm not sure if that was actually Salenga or that was a different pair of cars. But we saw it got very, very close to the wall on the banking. Yep, you make a good point about bump drafting. I think it's a lot harder than it looks, I believe, as a tactic. You have to trust the car in front. You have to trust the car behind. When you're two people that are very experienced and you know each other, it's like a great teamwork thing. You can really work well. You know how much you can get away with pushing without causing the rear instability of the car in front. I love being a pusher. I think it's fantastic, but it is not easy. You have to be super precise with your steering inputs. You can't weave at all. You have to be very, very precise. And if you're the car in front as well, you have to be super predictable. Bearing in mind the car behind will not only overheat and get very hot, because you're essentially blocking off the radiator. You're not getting as much airflow over the car. You're also at risk of damaging the car, of spinning out, of not seeing traffic. That's the big one as well. You can't see the cars in front. So if, for example, something happens down the road, you're the car in front that's being pushed along, your visibility is fine. If you're the pusher, you have no idea what's going on ahead, and maybe the car in front of you is going to have to suddenly dive to the left or right, and if you just bump at the wrong moment, that's going to cause a massive crash as well. Maybe the car in front is going to pit. So there's all of these things that you have to consider if you're not in direct comms with each other. And I just think it's a really interesting tactical element to racing, and it really comes into effect on these sorts of circuits like Daytona, just because of the speed and the banking. And immediately, as I do my little monologue about the wonders of bump drafting, the gap between the lead 2 and GT3 is back under a second. And it's over a second.
A monologue that Shakespeare would be proud of, I'm sure. 1.0 seconds, and teetering on the edge of that between Spiegel and Salenga. And yeah, I mean, racecraft is just so vast, and part of my day job outside of commentary, I suppose, it's more actually the side job now, the normal job, is to sort of make education-based things in sim racing, make it a sort of modules that relate to sort of traditional education in the UK. And when it comes to teaching racecraft, it's so, because I don't know how I've learned it, right? It's a skill that you just get, and it's something that you really have to sort of, when you're coaching people or you're giving this information, you have to give your piece, because that's all you can do. You have to educate on your experience, but you have to sort of preface the sense that you're going to do loads of races, you're going to build up this experience, you're going to build up this portfolio, if you like, and you're going to approach it very, very differently to what I am. You're going to make different decisions in the same scenarios as what I am, and I think that's one of the best things about racecraft, is that the approach, it's not, there is, I was going to say, it's not formulaic. There is a kind of a bit of a formula and maybe a foundation to it, but ultimately there are so many different routes that can get to the same answer of success. And yeah, when it comes to bump drafting, when it comes to slipstream, when it comes to working together, when it comes to traffic management, when it comes to overtaking, dealing with incidents, do you lift? Do you absolutely send it through a yellow flag zone? Most in sim racing will probably be going for the latter, but racecraft is so incredibly vast, and it's a skill that is very, very hard to teach, because you can only really give the person you're teaching a foundational level of just don't be silly, really, because outside of that, any decision at any point can work, and it's only in hindsight that we actually understand what was right and what was wrong.
Do you think Shakespeare was a pusher, or do you think he liked leading a bump drafting situation?
I don't know, actually. What would he... Chariots? Can you push a chariot?
Would Shakespeare be a GT3 or a downforce guy? I'm not quite sure.
I don't know.
Answers in the comments.
Yeah, that's true. Let's put a poll up. Shakespeare, what would he be driving?
Yeah, I'd be very intrigued. I think he'd be driving the Lamborghini. I think Shakespeare's I think
Verona,
he'd appreciate
the
Italian vibes, the artistry, very poetic. As unfortunately, a little bit of lag again, scaring me with Spiegel. Don't do that to me. Don't do that to me.
I don't know what's real. I'm in a bit of a virtual reality. Like, what is real, what's not, real or cake in terms of sim racing at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. But these drivers clearly not quite seeing it as inconsistently as we are at the moment. Let's be fair, because they are managing to keep on lapping it at a solid pace. We do apologise for those slight issues there. It's a really interesting point you make. I think you can only learn racecraft in theory to a certain level, and then it's all about instinct, it's about reaction, it's also about temperament. So much of racecraft is, can you actually stay calm in that moment, or do you let the red mist descend? And sometimes, don't get me wrong, red mist can be positive. If you can channel your red mist in the right way, a la, maybe an example would be someone like a Max Verstappen, who I think can switch it on when he's angry. He can be fast. Sometimes, don't get me wrong, he can lose his head and make more mistakes and have more incidents when he's angry. But also, drivers that have that ability to sort of get taken over by the adrenaline in that way can actually find more pace and be more aggressive and make better moves on opening laps, for instance. But I think a lot of it is about remaining calm and being able to make a clear and conscious decision. And so many incidents in motorsport and overtakes and battles and crashes and all these things, they're individual cases. What I'm trying to say is that each case is an individual situation, right? There's no two situations in racing that are identical. It just doesn't happen. And I think so much about whether a move is okay or not, and whether defending is okay or not, it's so hard to define with a set of rules, because honestly, it comes down to judgment, and it comes down to it just comes down to natural feeling, and what is right or wrong can be so difficult to actually pigeonhole and put down on a regulation set. I think it's like a natural thing to me. Did that feel right? If that was you, would you think that was fair or not? And yeah, racing is fascinating in that sense to me. It's such a psychological game, and of course, your parameters might be slightly different from someone else. What you believe to be fair racing might be different from someone else based on your upbringing in motorsport, what motorsport you watch, your karting career, your sim racing career, what type of vehicles you drive. All of these things can have an impact as well. So it's a fascinating world, is racecraft, and I think it would be quite fun to teach properly.
It's tough. I will say I'm doing an education degree at the UEA, so I've really enjoyed seeing how my mindset to delivering the content has changed as I've gone further and further in my education. I'm only first year uni, but I did a year of things before. Oh my goodness me, is it real? Is it not? I think Elishuk has actually gone round through turn number 1 and has spun round, able to rejoin fairly easily, but probably with quite a bit of a shock to the system. The other Porsche gets away, I say fairly scot-free, a little bit of a cut over the grass as they negotiate through the twisty section towards the International Horseshoe. Not great at all for the Canadian of Elishuk, who is able to rejoin, didn't lose too much time, able to continue. I think it was actually contact with Bottinger in the battle for what will be the top 5 positions inside the prototypes. Interesting as well, as we cut back to Lucas Selenga, the gap hasn't reclosed. It's grown further between Spiegel and Selenga. With 46 minutes left to go, into the pit lane comes the German. Of course, did come in a little bit earlier in the race as well. So this is basically scheduled. 46 minutes worth of fuel is about 3/4 worth of a tank. Is going to take a little bit longer to put in. And of course, Spiegel, when he comes in, will have less of a splash to put in. And I think this is ticking slowly more in favour of the Porsche. Selenga's run of form could well be dying off ever so slightly.
Yeah, there's two things really to consider there. You talked about taking your opportunity when it arrives. Should Selenga have actually made that move? Because now, it gets caught up in traffic, suddenly drops back from the Porsche, doesn't quite have the pace, and then can never get it back. If you get in front of the Porsche, yes, you could still make a mistake or drop back and things like that, but you don't necessarily lose the slipstream. You maybe just lose the position. So there are arguments for maybe the opportunity could have been taken there by the Audi driver. The second element to all of this, and this is the wild card in the pack, Zach, is what is Kokums doing? Because we saw Kokums take a much longer first pit stop. Now, that could have been down to a mistake or something. It could have been down to fresh tyres. It could have been down to different fuel load. We don't know. So for me, that's a curveball. That's a variable. If Kokums has been out there lapping cleanly, lapping quickly, maybe that strategy will actually come back in his favour later on in the race. So keep an eye on Latvian, see what he's going to do, and that's all I'll say.
Yeah, no, really good point, actually, because the question remains, are these guys going to take tyres at this stop? Do they have to? Can they chance it and go all the way? I don't know if Kokums did take tyres because, these guys did an hour on their stop, so they didn't take less fuel. That wasn't the variable that changed in terms of making their stop longer. So it must have been tyres for Kokums. I can't really think of anything else that it could have been. Time will tell whether or not that is correct. But we'll wait and see. And on the topic, of course, of Selenga, you're absolutely right in the sense that, and it goes back to racecraft, right? Judgment: do you do it? Do you not do it? When you get in front of a car and you slow down, if you're able to keep the position, both of you slow down. If you're behind and you slow down, you're the only one that's slowing down. You're the one that's dropping off the pace. So I think maybe getting in front and being in control could have been beneficial for Selenga. Again, that's in hindsight, and we're looking at it from a bird's eye view. Very, very different perspective to these guys, and judgment, hindsight, so many different things going on. Again, the next 44 minutes and 14 seconds will be the very telling moments of this race. Mate Mikovic, though, absolutely in control of this race. 12.5 seconds clear of Alex Mosen. As long as he's not his own worst enemy, it's his race to lose.
Yep, you're absolutely right. That incident as well we saw between last year, because just out of the pit lane, and the Porsche. You talked about different perspectives. We're obviously looking at it from the outside, and it looks like a silly incident into turn 1 where you come side by side. But that transition off of the tri-oval banking towards turn 1, the braking zone there, that is so easy. If you're trying to go for maybe a wider line and then cut in, or vice versa, you're trying to stay in the middle. That transition there that you've just seen on screen with Mate Mikovic, that is the one that is, very easy to make side-to-side contact, right? And actually, I think the drivers did quite well to really not have a bigger crash in that situation. We couldn't obviously see very cleanly exactly what happened, but it's a perfect example of, that the view from us was quite obvious, and two cars coming together looks silly, but in that situation, you cannot see directly to your left or right in sim racing. You can't, unless you're wearing a VR headset, you can only look so far to the side with triple screens or a widescreen monitor, for instance. So, yeah, it can be very, very challenging. Good to see that no one came out too badly from that incident. We look at Monty Verstappen for the first time in a while. So for anyone who's joined us in the last 20 minutes, again, no, it's not Max Verstappen. It is Monty. And Monty's still lapping 5 laps off, according to our timing tower, in the BMW after Tricky starts the race. But it's good to see these drivers still going strong. And I must say, especially in GT3, we have a lot of runners still lapping, still going around in what is a long race, a community race as it's turned into, and it's great to see such a high number, a lot of drivers still going strong at this stage. That is very, very close between Verstappen and our race leader, Mikovic, but it looks like Mikovic has got through just about cleanly.
Yeah, and that's going to be a big thing as well, right towards the end of this race, is how well can you negotiate the traffic when we're this close to the end. You don't want to get too desperate, especially a driver in Mikovic's position, right, because he's got so much to lose. But the good thing is that he's got that margin, so he can approach the last 40 minutes of this race with a very different lens than, say, a Spiegel or a Salenga or even a Kokums potentially after the pit stops fizzle out. Because he knows he's got that margin for error. He can afford to take his time through traffic. Maybe not overly extensively, because it only takes 1 or 2 runs, losing a couple of seconds here or there for Mosen to be back into it. But Mikovic is able to take a different perspective into this, really take his time, use that gap that he's been able to build to consolidate and stay safe, because he's done the hard work, he's done the heavy lifting. Now it's a case, this final 40 minutes, once he's come in for his second and final stop, just to bring it home.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and I think the pace advantage is enough there that he can afford to run it, below 100%, maybe 98, maybe 97%, but 10 seconds is not crazy, and we know Mosen is a very fast driver. Mosen has finished in the top half of top split races multiple times that we've seen here on RaceRoom special events, so we know the pedigree of driver, but Mikovic has just got that little bit extra in the pocket this week, and fair play. Because you know how difficult it is in a server this competitive to actually have a noticeable advantage over someone. Matthias Stahl we're on board with right now in the Porsche. I have to say, great effort from the Porsche driver. Currently the second best Porsche behind Spiegel. Only a minute off the race lead, having made the same amount of pit stops, which is nothing to be sniffed at whatsoever. And yeah, top 6 in this race is a great effort from the Porsche driver. So we've not seen too much of Matthias Stahl, and that's probably because he's been doing a good job of kind of staying out of trouble in the Falcon livery car.
And that's what you need, right, is to just... It's a race of attrition, ultimately, right? Things are going wrong here, there, everywhere. And just staying in the mix is all you can do. You've got to be in it to win it, even if you're half a second or so a lap off the pace. Being there or thereabouts, especially in the GT3 field, which has been quite chaotic, especially in any of the fields. I mean, even in the prototypes, you can see some fairly large gaps throughout the thing. You've really got to be in it, and consistency and attrition playing a massive factor. So Matthias Stahl, the pace has been all right. Don't get me wrong; he's not been slow by any stretch of the imagination, but he has just been brutally persistent. And P6. Nothing to shy away at. I mean, no, he's not in the conversation of a Spiegel or a Kokums or a Salinga by any means, but he's there or thereabouts. And a P6, in a day like today, in a field as competitive as those GT3s, absolutely you'd be proud.
Certainly. So, less than 40 minutes to go then for the Daytona 2.4-hour special event here on RaceRoom, and just to do a little bit of a recap of where we're at, with only a single stop to make at the most for any of these drivers. Some drivers have already made their final stops. We have Mikovic leading the race in the Lamborghini, 64 laps into this one, ahead of Alex Mosen in second in the BMW, and then third place is Damien Reed in another one of our BMWs, with Gerson fourth place top Porsche ahead of Bottinger, and Sipek, who's done a great job to recover to 6th after a couple of pit stops earlier on. I did notice, by the way, Elastic down to 10th was in the pits more than once in the last few laps, so really unfortunate for the Canadian to be maybe suffering from damage, maybe a drive-through, not quite sure, but multiple trips down pit road has dropped him back to 10th place. And then recap in GT3, it's Spiegel who still leads 14.5 seconds ahead of Fabian Roth in the Audi. Roth, of course, ruining a pair of mistakes, has to be said, earlier on in the race, facing the wrong way a couple of times in the Audi, one in a battle for the lead and one in an instant with a back marker. But it's really, cost Roth in the long run here, sitting in P2. We do have pit stops to take into account. Kokums we're watching now in P4, just closing in on the Ferrari of Moretis, who is in third place, doing a great job actually. Going under the radar is the Greek driver in the Ferrari, but doing a stellar job, 24 seconds off the lead on the podium. Probably won't last though, because our man in fifth place, Salinger, has pitted one more time than everyone else and is only 58 seconds off the lead. And I have to say as well, Zach, that gap was over a minute. It was comfortably over a minute, a couple of seconds, when the pit stop was made. Now, Spiegel's going to have to take less fuel, so the pit stop's going to be shorter, but Salenga's got the pace and is definitely putting himself in as much contention as he possibly can at this stage.
That's all he can do. It's just at this stage of the race, when you're maybe a bit of an underdog, you've just got to drive the car as fast as you can. And again, at this stage where you're in the final stint, you're not overly concerned about fuel saving. You don't care about your tyres. There's no long game now to think about. It's a 40-minute sprint, a dash to the checkered flag. You know your mission. Go and drive and get that gap down as best you can. I know it's fluctuating a little bit, but ultimately Salinger has been driving very very Maybe he took tyres, maybe that's the offset. Spiegel obviously on slightly older, Salinger on slightly newer. Not entirely sure what the situation is there, but again, the only time we'll really be able to tell is when Spiegel comes into the pit lane, sees what his pit time is, and sees sort of where he comes out. Kokums, again, the dark horse. And like you say, Moretis, the dark horses, the ones that you overlook, are the ones that often surprise you. I mean, he's quietly driven his way to P3 again. That can change as one of the BMWs has had a slight issue. That's Damien Reed going through and negotiating. It's not Alex Mosen, so it's not for position. No concerns there for the fans of the German. But yeah, I mean, it is just going to be a case of Salinger, no care about fuel, no care about tyres. Drive the car as quickly as you can and see what the gap is when the rest of your competitors come into the pit lane.
Yeah, that's all you can do at this stage. But we are getting to the crunch point here with 36 minutes to go. Looks like the battle in Hypercars you talked about earlier has petered out for the win. Not gone yet, trust me. One mistake from Mikovits, even that's not Mikovitz's fault. If he gets caught up in traffic or anything like that, we could still see a battle on. But pace-wise, it does look like Mate's got things under control ahead of Alex. GT3, of course, still very much all to play for. I don't think there's enough time for Roth. Kokums, I don't think the strategy's worked, maybe taking an extra pair of tyres compared to everyone else, but it's Salinger. And the gap now actually has gone back up to 1 minute and 2 seconds now between the leaders, as we see Kokums getting very close to some lap traffic there in GT3s. There's a BMW with a wing that is not quite the shape it's meant to be in, let's say. That was a great avoidance from Christers there to stop a big crash, because it got very dicey into the chicane.
As you would expect. The Le Mans chicane, I mean, it's fast, it's flowing, the curbs are there, and it's, like you said earlier, it's not an overtaking opportunity, really, by any means. And to go side by side there, very, very risky. To send moves there, very, very risky. And with just 35 minutes left to go, probably not the risk that I would be wanting to take. The biggest problem is when it comes between two classes, the interclass battles between the prototypes and the GT3s. So many how many times have we seen a prototype misjudge the speed differential and go, I have a second gap going into the bus stop chicane. That'll be fine. I can push. Oh no, that's a rear end of a car. Either they commit and go straight into the back of them, or they slam on the brakes and spin themselves out, which is probably the better of the two options with that one. But thankfully, we've not had too many major dramas. Whether that will change with 34 minutes left to go or not remains to be seen.
Absolutely. Still time for things to spice up here, but obviously once we see those last pit stops in GT3, that's when we're really going to have an idea of what's going on. So all we can do is watch the gaps, and these drivers just have to minimize mistakes. I really do like the livery, by the way, on that Lucas Salinger Audi. It's like an old Group B Quattro livery. Really appreciating that one. And the Falcon livery on the Porsche behind as well of Stahl. That's an iconic livery to see in sports car racing. So yeah, it's nice to see all the colour that we've got. In terms of manufacturers here today, Zach, I'd say in GT3, the Audi for me is probably the car that's looked the most competitive. I don't think Spiegel's Porsche has looked the fastest. He's driven it well, but you can see how hard he's having to push, especially when the two of them are close together. And judging that, by the fact that Roth, Kokums, and Salinger are all arguably quicker in terms of ultimate pace than Spiegel, at least Salinger and Roth have shown that. I do think the Audi is proving to be the car of choice for GT3s this year. No Lamborghinis is of note in the top 15 at all, and considering they dominated the race last year, that shows how things change.
Yeah, updates, balance of performance, anything can really make a bit of a difference. Setup, meta, again, there are big changes, and you see it across sims, across motorsport. One car will be quick, 1 week or one race, and then the next one is a completely different narrative. So, of course, the Audi at the very least seems to be a nice balance. I'm not entirely sure as to why. Again, I've not driven too much GT3 on RaceRoom. In fact, I say too much. I don't think I've driven at all GT3s. So I can't speak too much from my own experience. From what I've been told, the Audi definitely better on straight line speed, and of course, the rear engine still pretty good on the power, good through the mid speed. Basically, very similar to the Porsche in terms of the characteristics because of the engine placement and the and how you would drive the car. But it just seems that ultimately the top end speed of the Audi is what's giving it its pace today, and I think that's come through, especially with how we saw Salinger on the back of Spiegel and that complete gap close in the slipstream. I mean, it was, you see it a lot regardless. The slipstream is strong, but from Audi to Porsche in the slipstream, the Audi just seems to have the legs, and I would say probably is the stronger car, but Spiegel is driving that Porsche very, very well.
He certainly is, and I will talk a little bit about car variety in terms of the different classes. So obviously we've seen the different layouts you have in GT3, the Audi being a more traditional rear-engine car. You've got the Porsche rear-engine, so the Audi mid-engine is what I meant to say. And you've got all sorts of different layouts in GT3. We're only seeing a small selection of them today. I think we've got 5 different manufacturers out there. We've got the Porsches, we've got Ferrari, we've got Audi, we've got BMW, and we've got one Mercedes as well, which is good to see. But all these cars have different characteristics and different strengths, which we see across the globe with GT3 racing. As we see this battle now for P3 with Christer's Kokums around the outside in the purple Audi. And he's going to get that move done just before turn 1. Nice and smooth. There's the Porsche back marker just up ahead of Razumov. But yeah, great stuff from Christer's Kokums. Gets back up into P3. So potentially Christer's on fresher tyres than the cars around him, as we saw that longer pit stop earlier. But I don't think it's going to be quite enough to get back into this fight for the race win, at least. Salinger a minute behind Spiegel at the moment, so that gap pretty stable, and it's going to be a short stop for Spiegel towards the end of this one, as we see that got very dicey between the Porsche and the Audi, and I think Kokums is off, back on the track, just about saves it. Incredible stuff. But a very close call there with that Porsche, and unfortunately Razumov ending up on the grass on the inside, so things got very dicey indeed there through the dog leg. I was also going to talk a little bit about the hypercars as well. You have, should be clear, 3 different hypercars that you could choose from, and all 3 are represented. We've got 3 different hypercars in the top 3 at the moment. We've got Lamborghini, BMW, and Porsche. Now, these are all LMDH cars, so none of these are built to the hypercar regulation set, which is LMH. They're all LMDH cars. It's a little bit confusing, but they're all racing together in the same hypercar category. So these cars should all be pretty closely matched in terms of the way the drivetrain works and all of these things, as we see the BMW pull into the pits. And I'm actually just seeing, Zach, on the timing tower, Mosin is showing it as ahead of Mate Mikiewicz. So we're going to have to see what happened there. The gap seems to have stabilized, but it does look like, in fact, is that Mate Mikiewicz back in the pit lane? I wasn't expecting to see him back in the pit, Zach.
No. Yeah, that's a weird one. I think, are they both in the pit lane?
Yeah, they are.
Got back through, yes. Yeah. So Mikiewicz, Mosin got through because his pit boxes later on. Panic averted for Mikiewicz fans. Yeah, Mosin is stationary and able to get back going again. He has to be going soon if he wants any chance in this race, as Kokums comes in and of course will come out. Now we need to time this pit stop and keep an eye on how long it's going to be. Also relative to Salinger, who of course will be coming through very shortly. Mate Mikiewicz, though, no panic, is through, and that will be his third and final stop of the race.
Yeah, so I'm guessing that's just the way that the hypercar stints have fallen. Yeah, the way that the strategies work, these drivers have split their stints into slightly smaller sections, and that's just where it naturally falls. But yeah, I was getting a bit confused there. I kind of almost forgot that there was still another round of pit stops for the hypercars to go. So clearly the two of them coming in at the same time, and that gap's actually bigger now as well, 16.8 seconds between the lead two. So panic over for the viewers and the fans out there of Mate Mikiewicz. It's status quo, and things continue on.
Yes, 30 minutes left to go, and Yeah, at this stage for Mikovic, it's just going to be a consolidation drive, right? Keep it clean, keep it tidy, do your thing, and repeat, rinse and repeat from what you've been doing. I'm sure, you know, given the circumstances for Mikovic, this is probably quite a low stakes race, low pressure. You know, maybe this is going to sound awful to the rest of that LMDH field, but maybe not as strong of a field as he's was potentially expecting coming into this one. Relative, I mean, Alex Mosen's still very good, and again, I'm not dissing or absolutely, you know, dropping on the rest of this field, but of course, Mikovic coming into this arguably maybe was the favourite. Alex Mosen, a slight bit of a mistake through the bus-stop chicane as well. But yeah, he's coming into this, he was relaxed, he was calm, he was composed, he had the practice, speaking to a couple of other drivers, you know, upwards of 10, 15 hours, 20 hours of practice coming into an event like this. So he knows what he's doing. He knows his strategy. He stuck to it. And even though right at the start things went a little bit shaky, the Hungarian has stuck through and now just needs to consolidate. Matthias Stahl, I think maybe a bit of a lock-up through the Le Mans chicane. Currently, Falcon Livery at 44 is running P5. I think that is subject to change once he does come into the pit lane. Also, one more thing, Selenga and Kokums, their gap about 21 seconds. So Kokums has been able to gain relative to the previous stint, but still quite a ways off.
Yeah, and we did see Kokums have that incident just a few laps ago with the backmarker Porsche, which cost him a few seconds, but clearly, yeah, that gap's going to change anyway. We've got more gaps changing, actually. No, that's actually position change. Selenga down the inside, or past Stahl. I'm not sure if that was maybe just a timing tower, because we were on board with Selenga, but I was too busy watching the timing tower to actually see what happened on track, so apologies, but we'll see how all of that shakes up. Stahl still to pit. Selenga's definitely had his final stop. I believe that Selenga's the top driver that's had all the stops. Spiegel and Roth should still be to come in, but it's going to be a short splash and dash with 26 minutes or so to go in this race. We did lose a couple of fast drivers early on that, you know, we didn't even really see in this race. You know, likes of Bo Dixon we saw in the server earlier on and setting good lap times in qualifying, but we just didn't see in the actual race, unfortunately. So he would have been another name that would have been up there. Obviously, we saw Artur Grad drop back very early on in the race as well. Would have been a contender up there. So there's been a few big names that have fallen by the wayside, which has probably made Mikovic's life a little less stressful, especially after the mistake or whatever happened to Mate that we didn't see before he had to come back through the field. But Mosen looking still very strong for a P2, 22 seconds off the lead. It's now at the point, though, where even if Mikovic has a spin, it's still going to be recoverable ahead of Mosen. So we'll just have to see. I do want to give a shout out to the Sweden P3 as well, Gudjonsson. He's had a really consistent run, just always been there or thereabouts at the front of a kind of big pack, and has now found himself, yes, probably with a stop still to make, but P3, which is a really, really solid effort. And again, we'll just have to wait and see how all the pit stops shake out. In fact, Oscar Gudjonsson is in the pits right now in the Porsche, so probably will drop back. That may be Bottinger in behind as well, so we'll see what happens on that one. It could also be one of our many Porsche Penske's that are out there on circuit at the moment, so we'll find out in just a minute, I'm sure.
Yes, the quantity of Porsche Penske's is definitely there, which definitely goes a long way for them. And to be fair to Gudjonsson, he's been again there or thereabouts. You know, Mikovic and Mosen have been the ones that we've been, you know, speaking about, but yeah, Gudjonsson has driven a really consistent race. I'd say probably maybe best of the rest category, and by no means, you know, even just coming into this race, especially with the circumstances beforehand, jumping in and doing a good enough job to hold a P3 is a lot to be proud of. You know, we've seen the pace of Reed, Sipek, Bottinger at stages in this race, and Gudjonsson has been the one to maintain that, to keep that strategy, to keep his cool, to keep his calm. You know, just to drive an LMGH for 2.4 hours straight is an achievement in of itself. You know, getting to the end is the achievement, and to do so on the podium again is a very, very strong race indeed. Now it is just a case of keep it clean. You've got the gap to Bottinger behind. Of course, you realistically, no offense, Gudjonsson, you're not going to catch the top two. You're in a bit of a no man's land. Get that car to the checker flag, reap the rewards, and go to bed tonight a happy man that you've managed to podium in the Daytona 2.4 hours. Again, I would probably say maybe one of the bigger events of RaceRoom for the year. I know there was a lot of you know, support and community backing going into this event. A lot of people wanting to attend and get involved in stuff. Obviously, you know, in the past we've had the Nürburgring, we've had obviously the Macau at the back end of last year. Daytona is just one of those events that, you know, you want to start the year of, and it's one that just feels nice to win. It's just a good way to brush off the cobwebs of the winter, which is there really a winter in sim racing? Let's be honest. But ultimately, starting the season well and to get a podium for Mikiewicz, Mosen, Gajerson, good going for Spiegel, Salenga, and maybe whoever joins them. Well, we'll wait and see in 23 minutes time.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to say it's Roth at the moment that's probably, in theory, in P3, once we see Stell make that pit stop. But Roth's come out, 3 seconds behind, and Roth makes another mistake. That is a clear mistake on turning from Fabian Roth. I'm not quite sure what happened there. The rear's locked up or something. Just maybe slightly rearward brake bias on that Audi. I don't know. But it just pivots and unfortunately seemed to come into contact with the hypercar there as well, and that is at least the third mistake we've seen on screen for Fabian Roth. And the thing is, he had a chance at second there, quite clearly, Zach, as well. He was only 3 seconds behind Salenga, so yeah, just summing up the race really for Fabian Roth. We know how talented he is, and don't get me wrong, he's driven very well, clearly pushing the limits of that Audi, but you have to say he's likely to be disappointed the way this race has gone, because he had the pace to do so much more here.
The thing is as well, is Spiegel, I think, now as a pit stop, it could have been race-winning contention for Fabian Roth, not even, P2. And that's, I think, what's going to be sore most, is because he's had these drawbacks and he's been able to fight back. He's been able to close back into contention on a number of occasions. And I think the fact that story would have been amazing. He spun earlier on the race, still came through to contend for the win or even go all the way to win. And that's going to be what I think stings the most, is that he wasn't able to recapitalize and redeem himself from earlier on and instead make those mistakes again. Very easily done. Turn 1, you release the brakes a bit too quickly, or you hold the pressure as you trail off towards the apex a bit too much, especially, in that rear-engined Audi. It's easy just to loop it round. That's a given. It's a shame, but yeah, I mean, he's got 21 minutes just to see what he can do, recover something. Nonetheless, out of the pit lane comes Philipp Spiegel for the final time, and the difference in the pit stop times between Spiegel and Salenga, who came in 24 minutes ago, whereas Spiegel, who's been able to save a bit more fuel, now has a 12-second lead. When Salenga came into the pit stop, it was 1.8.
So the theory there is, as Matej Stahl comes into the pits as well from that podium position, the theory is then, the reason why Lucas Salenga suddenly found what looked like a kind of second wind of pace in that second stint, I'm going to predict that Lucas Salenga deliberately short-stinted that second one. So put in less fuel, had a lighter car potentially than those around, and was able to use that pace to get on the back of Spiegel and stay in the slipstream. And that would potentially explain the deficit, because then, Salenga has to come in earlier, has less fuel, obviously means a longer final stop, but Spiegel was just looking really under the cosh in that second stint. And to be fair, Spiegel didn't look under the cosh in the first stint and hasn't really looked under the cosh since the pit stop started. He's just been kind of running around on his own comfortably in that Porsche. So that's what I'm going to say has probably happened, but I don't know. I don't have all the stats in front of me, unfortunately. But it just shows how much strategy can come into play here in these GT3s. And Kokums could have been right there with Roth again, but I think Kokums has gone for the more aggressive strategy, more tyres, and that's maybe, given him a little bit of a pace advantage, but unfortunately costs more time in the pit stops. I love that about sim racing, that you can have so many different ways to get to a final goal, and it can really be unclear sometimes who's actually in prime position until the very end if you don't have all the stats and the data. So yeah, fascinating stuff. Monty Verstappen there we view in the BMW once again. Good to come back to Monty, still running, still 5 laps down in P14, still with a damaged BMW, but the German will be at this point, I'm sure, very much looking forward to the checkered flag.
Yeah, a sigh of relief for Monty Verstappen. Yes, no, it's not Max Verstappen. If you are now just joining us for another time in this race, the Monty Verstappen has graced us with his presence on in this race and has done a job. Right, he's out there on circuit. He's had his issues, but he's getting to the end, and you've got to respect that perseverance. And that's one of the things I really respect is Kokum versus Moretus. That's towards turn 1, ducking between some of the lap traffic as Kokum's, the Latvian, negotiates himself back into 4th position, now ahead of the Ferrari, the Greek driver of Moretus. The Latvian goes through and up into 4th position. 5 seconds off Fabian Roth, and if there's another mistake for the German, there could still be a podium here for Christos Kokums yet to come. Just under 20 minutes left to go. Very much is now a sprint to the checkered flag. So I'm sure the Latvian will be pushing. If he has taken a more aggressive strategy, if he has got those fresh tyres, he could have the advantage, but that BMW looking very aggressive. I think that could well be Alex Mosen potentially. Definitely the same livery as down the inside through the Western Horseshoe, getting very racy with one of the prototypes, but inevitably goes through. costing him a little bit of time there. But now I'm sure the focus for Kokums is going to be forward, maximise the next 18 minutes, see if you maybe can get onto the back of Fabian Roth for that podium.
Yeah, and that'll come down as well to the tyre strategy, and we think Christers is on a more aggressive strategy, so let's wait and see what happens there. Yeah, it could have been, as you say, Mohsen in the Shell BMW. It also could have been Damien Reed in the second of our Shell BMWs. Just wanted to flag as well, Gerson in the Porsche is back up to P3 after the pit stop, so clearly they're on pure merit and pace. It's not just strategy. So a podium position still on the cards, as we've talked about, for the Swede, which is great to see. There are 5 Penske Porsches, I believe, still running around, so it's a bit difficult when you see a Penske Porsche off the road. It can be hard to tell which one it is, but this Porsche, I believe, has been the most consistent of the lot, as we've already talked about. So fair play to Oscar, doing a great job, and we'll be looking to just hold on for another 17 or 18 minutes of this race. Let's hope the drivers have put enough virtual energy or fuel in the car to make it to the end, because of course not only do you have to wait for the clock to hit 0, you also have to potentially do an extra lap on top of that, depending on where you are on circuit versus the race leader. If the race leader is just behind you as they cross the line, that of course means you have to do another full lap. So always something you have to bear in mind, Zach, with the strategy, and a mistake I have made many times. Not giving yourself that extra little lap of fuel to get to the end. Or actually, the other mistake I've made is when the leader's been coming up behind me and the checkered flags come out for the leader, and I've seen the checkered flag and thought my race was over.
No.
I've definitely done that before in a serious ACC event. So pain to say the least.
Ouch. Well, it's simpler, don't get laps, really.
Yeah, well, exactly. I've just exposed myself there, really, haven't I? Probably for the 5th time in the race I was getting lapped. But
it's difficult, especially for the GT3s, because you're at the mercy of, you don't know how many laps you're going to do. Obviously, in the prototypes, it's the same, if you're a lap down or whatever. But yeah, for the GT3s, you are very much at the mercy of Mate Mikovic. I'm one of those drivers that I've never perfectly calculated fuel, no matter what. Even if I've used a fuel calculator, I don't trust it, and I always put an extra 2 or 3 litres in, just in case. And I always end the race with like 6 litres left in the tank. It's ridiculous. I'm like, well, that was 0.2 of a second that I could have had a lap. Probably wasn't that big of a difference in my driving. Definitely cost me in those races on every single occasion. But yeah, I panic too much. I have to have just a little bit of extra fuel, because to me, I don't know, I can't see the weight, and I just sort of just drive around it anyway, so I just put a little bit extra in. I'd rather lose a 10th or 2 a lap and actually make it to the end. But yeah, for these guys at this level, where that weight is absolutely going to be making a difference, yeah, that fuel is maybe playing on their mind. And especially with Spiegel, Salenger, Roth, with how tight it has been at times, you really can't afford an extra couple of litres into the tank is an extra couple of seconds just that stationary. And again, for Fabian Roth and Kristen's Kokums, that's the difference between finishing P3 and P4.
Yeah, you're not wrong. You've made me feel a little bit better as well, I have to say, because I'm with you. I've been burned a few times with running out of fuel. In fact, I've done it once live on the Traxion channel in part of an esports event on RaceRoom, nonetheless. So that was very well judged of me. But honestly, I'm with you. I give myself usually an extra like 2 laps, or if the calculation is I use let's say 3.5, 3.6 liters of fuel a lap, I just call it 4. And it is overkill, and because the reality is I'm not good enough I could find that pace back if I was a better driver anyway. So I don't think, when I'm driving around and I'm losing I'm not thinking, if I was just had 1 liter less fuel, I'd be 100th quicker every single lap. I don't view it like that at all. I just think, I want to relax and get to the end of the race and not think about fuel. So I am with you, but at this level, as you say, it does matter. That's when it really comes in. I say at this level, of course, we have a big range of levels in this race, which is cool to see. But obviously, there are still within this race plenty of drivers at the top of their game. Your Spiegels, your Roths, your Mikovics, and your Mohsens. So, these guys will be well prepared. It's amazing as well just how fast, and I've said this every broadcast, the fastest drivers on RaceRoom, I cannot comprehend to you how fast they actually are. You think you're going quickly and you're nailing every apex and you're hitting everything and you're 2 and a bit seconds off, and you're going, is it the setup? Have they got some sort of alien setup that just makes the car so much quicker? It's not. It's just learning every single limit of the curves, of the track limits. It's learning the car and the car's behavior and how to get it rotated, how to get out of the corners. And there is just a massive learning curve beyond what you think there is with RaceRoom, which I absolutely love. It's a very easy sim to jump in and pick up and play and get involved in racing. It's a very difficult sim to get to the very, very highest level, and that makes it a really, intriguing challenge and a great learning arc.
I've always really enjoyed any time I've gone onto RaceRoom. Obviously, yeah, I'll go back to the Rocket Race Star F4. Rocket Race Star Formula 4 Esports Competition UK. Again, say that 5 times fast. It's awful. But that racing series. I mean, it was one of the first big things I did in sim racing, and it was a ton of fun to do. Obviously, RaceRoom really invest in broadcast, obviously with Traxion now, and making sure that these races do get viewership, do get the community around, because I think that is one of the strongest aspects of RaceRoom is the community, is how cooperative people are, how collaborative people are, always looking in the Discord, seeing people talk to each other, having fun and sharing strategies and things. I mean, where at any other top-level esports event would you see a post about what strategy to do in the announcements channel of the official? You just wouldn't, would you? Like, I think it's spectacular. The driving, I haven't nailed. It's been a couple of years since I've driven on RaceRoom, I will admit, so there have been changes and things, but it is quite a niche way of driving from what I can tell. You've got to be very particular with the amount of steering lock you use, how you trail brake, how you extract that pace from the car, and it's something that the people like Mate Mikovic really do, because it is a bit of a grind to get quick. Like you say, easy to jump in and get to grips with. That's the same with any sim. Those transferable skills are going to be there. What a race line looks like. Not to fall through the map as Mate Mikovic momentarily did. How to approach a lap. But it is then that very detailed nuance of RaceRoom that I think really does set, the good from the great.
Absolutely. And we've seen really good camaraderie in these special events. Just a couple of events ago, Interlagos 2 Hour, which was the last time we saw Hypercars and GT3s both in action on the same track during a special event. We saw it was a moment between Fabian Roth and Kratoshvili, which was just amazing to see, where the leader got stuck, beached on a curb after a spin, and second place, instead of just taking the race lead and driving off into the sunset, actually stopped, pushed the leading car off of the curb so that the two could resume battle, which I just thought was absolutely amazing. So you had P2 helping out a stranded P1 on a curb so that they could continue racing. And even though these are ranked races, there is safety ranking, driver ranking, all of these things at stake. The drivers still, there's a really nice community and a nice level of camaraderie there, which I thoroughly enjoyed watching. And I have to say, I've really enjoyed when I've been doing these RaceRoom ranked races, which, by the way, you can get involved in. RaceRoom is free to enter. There are free bits of content with cars and tracks, but you can also buy packs, or you can buy individual cars that you like. You can test drive them as well to see if you like them before you buy them. But you can get involved very easily in ranked racing on RaceRoom, and you can take part in all of these events. There are multiple splits. Yes, we've had obviously the server issues tonight, which has made this one a little bit different to usual, but generally speaking, you can jump in these daily races, you can jump in the weekly or the special events, have a great race, and against people that are like-minded, people that are a similar speed, and it is just a very positive place to be. So big shout out to RaceRoom, and they've done a great job with this new ranked system. And I thoroughly recommend, if you're into your PC sim racing, go and try it out. Nothing to lose.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing I want to say here as well is I think we actually got Kokum side by side with Fabian Roth. This is the battle for the podium with just 10.5 minutes left to go. Of course, it's the purple Audi on the outside. That, of course, the Latvian sending it through turn number 1, getting to the apex first as well. And there goes Christos Kokums through and up into third positions. Fabian Roth, not really much that he could have done about that one. Sensational move from the Audi, and now into the International Horseshoe, will hold firm on that one. 10 minutes left to go, and Latvian has been able to recover 25 seconds off the race lead, 15 seconds off P2. Not really a realistic expectation, I don't think, for the Latvian to set to himself, but a podium nonetheless. The gap just after the pit stops, about 5 seconds. He's been able to close and surpass that while we were waiting for it to happen, suspended in that anticipation of when or if Kokums was going to be able to close the gap. The number 16 Audi has been able to do that through now. The question remains, has Roth got the pace? Has he got the consistency? Has he got the mental strength, really, after the race that he's had, to now stay in contention for that podium?
Yes, but he doesn't have the tyres, is what I'm going to say. I think that's where Kokums has got the advantage here. I might be totally wrong, and I probably am, but I think that's where, this is where Christer's strategies is helped, and he's gone through. I think he's maximised his race really well. Roth, we saw, had, Kokums has been fast the whole race, but Roth, I think, ultimately is probably the fastest of all four when everything's hooked up, I would say, when they're all on the same strategy, but clearly doesn't really have an answer for Christers Kokums at the moment. And to me, that points towards a deficit in tyres or something of the like. But either way, Great effort from Kokums to get back onto the podium. It won't be top Audi in this event. It won't be a race win, but it very much could be a special event podium, which would be great to see for the Latvian. 15 seconds is far too much to catch Salenga on pure pace, so it's going to come down to, of course, a mistake or an issue for the Audi up ahead. And same thing with Spiegel. That gap stabilised at around about 11 seconds. Meanwhile, Mikovic is absolutely driven away from Alex Mosen for P1 in this race. The Lamborghini looking absolutely on top of the world. 83 laps into this race, 8 minutes to go. Just needing to keep it all neat and tidy now is Mate, but it looks like it's going to be an upgrade from a podium at Macau to a win in the hypercar class here at Daytona.
Yeah, I mean, the question remains, which one do you think he values more? The podium at Macau in the GT3 or the win here at Daytona? Well, he's not even got the win yet. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, but what would you value more?
I think, given the circumstances, I think a top split podium at Macau with all of those GT3 cars in contention, I think that is to me, if you were to put me in both of these situations in exactly the races that we've had, I would say the Macau podium is probably the one that required a higher level of perfection. Just given the nature of this race, I think Mikovic has just had the pace here. Like he's not looked like he's had to drive at 110%. That doesn't exist, but you know what I mean. He doesn't look like he's had to drive at 100% every lap to get this. He's got a big gap. Even with a mistake, he's been able to claw that back to the win. And I think Macau to get a podium up against the best of every class is remarkable. So, you know, I love both circuits for very different reasons. Macau and Daytona, they're both iconic, and I'd take both results. And a win is always a nice feeling. However, I just think that the podium at Macau is probably the bigger achievement. But I mean, it's hearsay. Both of them are great.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a win at Daytona is great, and like you say, a win is a win. He's deserved it, and I'm sure he'll be very, very happy with it. But I mean, Macau is just a bit of a different beast. So I'm looking forward to the next special event that we have at Macau, to say the least. On board with Fabian Roth into the final, just under 7 minutes of this race left to go. Of course, trying desperately to hang on to contention for that podium, but that gap now stretching to what is nearly ticking on the edge of 2 seconds. You can see that purple Audi just in front. That is Christos Kokums, of course, the Latvian, now recently taken the podium position away from the German and begun to just pull away. The slipstream, absolutely no hope for Fabian Roth, and I think you're right. I think it is a tyres thing. It's not that he doesn't want to contend or that he doesn't have the pace to go and contend. I think it's physically he's unable to. The grip is very much in favour of Christos Kokums at this stage, and the Latvian is pulling away, which of course for Fabian Roth, again, the race that he's had and how close he's been on a number of occasions is going to be very frustrating, but he still has a lot to hold his head up about. I mean, he's been, you know, on raw pace, I would say probably the quickest of the field. You know, when he's been able to hook up a lap or hook up a stint, been one of the quickest, if not the quickest, so a lot to be proud of, and a P4 again, nothing to shy away from, a lot to be proud of. Same to Damien Reed, who's had his ups and downs. P4, we were talking about in the GT3's P4, of course, now in the prototypes with Damien Reed. He's had his ups, he's had his downs. He's recovered, of course, from spins. So he was down in outside of the top 10 right early on in this race, and to come back to P4 again, very proud. We talk about milestones. Yeah, you want to win. Yeah, you want a podium. The top 5, still pretty decent.
Absolutely. And just a shout out to some of the drivers that have fallen by the wayside throughout this race. We had Olivier Jourdan leading at one point in the Lamborghini off strategy, but unfortunately ended up having to retire, as did Lynn Flower in the Jota Porsche early. Sasha Andrich disappeared as well part of the way through the race, so another DNF. But we've still got Damien Reed and Tom Creed going strong, as you can see. We did lose as well Bo Dixon right near the start. And there was a few other names. Kratoshvili also came to blows early on in the race, but great to still have as many cars as we do circulating here at Daytona. The GT3 numbers have very steadily dropped, but generally speaking, we've had a really strong attrition rate, much stronger relatively than Macau. But there are of course less concrete walls and buildings to crash into, and less Melka hairpins to get stuck at as well, which certainly helps things. A couple of things I've noticed in recent stint as well. I do want to give a quick shout out to Stefan Tarou, who had issues in the Porsche earlier in the race. We know Stefan's been fast. He's appeared in the top split event a couple of times now recently, but has had issues today. Great job to get back up to P7 after dropping well outside the top 10 earlier on. So A little shout out there. Sweeney still also holding on to his top 10 in the number 1 BMW, so it's been a good run for the Italian as well. But yeah, everyone still going at this point is doing a great job, and I have to say it's very impressive to see that the top 5 are still only separated by 41 seconds, 2.4 hours into this race, given the circumstances. And for a little bit more context on the circumstances tonight to do with the servers and stuff, do keep an eye on the RaceRoom Facebook page and Instagram page, because we do believe a statement will be going out on Instagram and Facebook within a matter of minutes. So do head over there and you'll get a little bit more context and understanding as to what's happened tonight if you were one of the drivers that was affected by the events.
Yes, and the other thing I wanted to just sort of say is it's not a huge team at RaceRoom. You know, it's not a huge proper full-on. I mean, obviously it's a huge operation and there's a lot of effort that goes into it. But you know, they're not an army, right? It's very much a platoon, I guess, of people that are responsible for this, and they all do their best. And a big shout out to every single member of staff at RaceRoom. You know, they didn't want it to happen, they didn't intend for it to happen, and they did their best to make something happen for the community. All of them care very deeply. They're all very, very passionate about what they do. And they have done for years and years and years. For example, Chris, Captain Coffee, everyone knows him. He is the GOAT in terms of RaceRoom. He's always there. He's amazing, and again, that extends all the way through the entire staff at RaceRoom. They are all fantastic in their own ways and their own efforts. And I'm sure they're going to make amends for it. They're going to make it right. And again, there's not much they can do. But going forward, of course, I'm sure that you guys will be treated and things will be looking on the up and up. Hopefully, maybe more special events or more racing to go and do. Obviously, nothing confirmed or anything, but it would be really nice to see that the community bounce back and everyone rally together and have some more fun. Because ultimately, that's what we're here for. We're here to have some fun. It's pretend race cars, and Mate Mikovic at the moment is the one driving them better than anyone.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said, Zach. And it is. Yeah, it's obviously a shame we had so many people signed up for the event, but listen, we've had a couple of amazing special events recently, Interlagos and Macau. We've had plenty over the years, and nothing goes perfectly all the time. So I'm sure RaceRoom will be doing everything in their power to rectify these issues going forward, and hopefully we will have 20-30 splits of Daytona racing next time we head here. So do keep an eye on the RaceRoom socials, check out the Discord server as well for all the latest updates and context, and I'm sure you'll hear about all the special events when they happen. But we are now coming towards the end of the 2.4 hours of Daytona. 1 minute and 41 seconds remain for Mate Mikovic out in front in the Lamborghini SC63. Now, will this be the first special event victory for Lamborghini and Hypercar? They obviously dominated GT3 last year at Daytona. I think this might be obviously we've only talked about Split 1 generally, and this is a slightly different race tonight, but it's the first time I will have seen the Lamborghini SC63 on top of the podium in a special event, which is great to see. Great to see variety in manufacturers, and obviously this is a car that is not going to be appearing so much in real world racing anymore. Hopefully we'll see some privateer efforts out there on circuit, but Mate doing a fantastic job to honour the Italian mark with this beautiful black and gold livery, and he's just going to have one more lap when he crosses the line in just a minute to complete here at Daytona, and a thoroughly deserved victory is on the cards.
100%. Also, as well, you've got Lamborghini, BMW, Porsche, the three options inside the top 3. They also, all 3 of them, appear exactly twice inside the top 6. I mean, yeah, maybe that doesn't extend all the way through the field with other, BMWs and Porsches, but, the top 6, the big 6, not bad going at all. Obviously, Audi and the GT3 is a bit of a different discussion, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, but it's a Porsche that will be coming out on top at the end of course, their next lap when Spiegel started, because Mate Mikovic, of course, will be taking the checker at the end of this one. He has thoroughly deserved this. I mean, he's bounced back. He got the pole. He led from the start. He fell back a little bit, and since his strategy, his pace has just been flawless. So much so that 49.5 seconds he is clear from Alex Mosen, who led for a good, I want to say, 20-25 minutes of this race, which is a decent chunk of the total time. Mate Mikovic has just risen to the occasion. He's a driver that's a very big regular in the world of RaceRoom racing experience. He does all the special events, a podium last time out at Macau. He's raced in loads of private championships and done very, very well, raced at the highest level of RaceRoom sim racing. And yeah, he's going to kick off 2026, I think, with in style.
He certainly is. We've seen it all tonight. We've seen some great overtakes around the outside into the chicane. We've seen contact. We've seen incidents. Speaking of incidents, off goes our P2 runner, Alex Mosen, on the final lap. Good thing he's got a big gap back to the Porsche in P3. But as I say, we have seen plenty tonight. But one thing that's been consistent throughout is the performance and speed of Mate Mikovic out in front in the Lamborghini. He's played it well through traffic. He's played it sensibly. Yes, he's made mistakes, or there's been issues, at least we can say, for Mate. But ultimately, he's going to come out victor here at Daytona. It's a podium at Macau, but it is the top step and a win for Mate Mikovic in the Daytona 2.4 hour here on RaceRoom Racing Experience. A big congratulations to the Hungarian for the victory, and he will be absolutely delighted with that. It's Philip Spiegel who's going to take home honours in GT3 as long as he can navigate the Le Mans chicane for one last time, nice and safely over the curbs. We haven't seen as many instances as you might expect through that chicane throughout this race, so that's full credit to all of the drivers we have here today. Salanga put up a great effort in the Audi, but it wasn't quite enough. Kokums put up a great effort. It wasn't quite enough. Roth made some mistakes, had the pace, but ultimately didn't have the consistency that we've seen from Philip Spiegel out in front in the Porsche. And it is going to be Spiegel who rounds the final corner, heads towards the line and takes victory in the GT3 class. Thoroughly deserved, 80 laps completed and a win for the German. Fantastic stuff. Across the line comes Alex Mosen, second place in Hypercar in that BMW. And I'm sure he'll be happy as well. He gave it his all, just didn't quite have the pace out there tonight. And there's P2 for Lucas Salanga in the Audi, flashing the lights as he crosses the line. And I'm sure all of these drivers will enjoy a nice lie down after that race, because it is physical and it's tiring and it's mentally tiring. Big shout out as well to all the drivers who are maybe less experienced but found themselves in this broadcast race, doing a great job keeping it running. And generally speaking, I have to say that the standards that we were able to witness were really good. There's always incidents, but it was thoroughly enjoyable. And yeah, well done to everyone for getting to the end.
Yeah, attrition in of itself is one thing, and yeah, to get to the end after the day that we've had, really well done. Obviously, bigger wells done to the podium sitters. Obviously, Fiegel, Mate Mikovic, the winners of their respective categories, smashing job, and yeah, great job from those that are on the podium, Lucas Lenga, and of course those that were running at the podium. Of course, with it was, oh my god, I've forgotten his name, the Latvian, the driver, Kokums. That's the one. Yeah. Oh my goodness me, it just went. What a day that we've had. It's been an interesting one. Yes, a big congratulations to each of our podium sitters. The race in of itself, you know, we didn't have the most action-packed, let's put it that way. We didn't have the side-by-side runs to the line that maybe we could have had or could have expected, but I think that just speaks volumes to the to the level of attrition, the level of consistency that was needed to succeed tonight.
Yeah, I think the GT3 battle kept me thoroughly entertained throughout. We obviously had a little bit more of a spread in Hypercar, but it was still good to watch Mate catch up and pass Alex as well. But that GT3 battle was enthralling. Mistakes ultimately cost out Roth, I think, in the end. But a fantastic job from Spiegel, and he managed to keep it clean, keep it calm under all sorts of pressure throughout that race, and take home the win. It's been a bit of a chaotic night, it has to be said. Hopefully the next one will be a bit smoother, but I have still thoroughly enjoyed myself. So I hope you guys have enjoyed the stream. A big thank you for all of the support throughout, and of course a big thank you to RaceRoom for these ranked races. You can of course get involved. Jump onto RaceRoom. It's free to get onto, of course. A lot of the content's free, and then you can also buy packs. You can buy content to race the cars and tracks of your dreams as well. But that's going to be it for myself, John Munro, and my colleague Zach Sweeney tonight. We hope you've had a good one, and we hope to see you again soon. Take care.